Yun Sui let the flying tiger soar at full speed. It raced into the clouds in less than a second. When she turned around, no one was behind her. "Humph! You made me wait so long. You deserve it." Yun Sui did not allow her tiger to slow down. She flew straight to the Xenogeneic Island. Yun Sui planned to reach the Xenogeneic Island and wait for Han Sen there. She was curious to see how long it would take for him to get there. Her Jade-winged tiger was a Marquise-class Xenogeneic. It was one of the fastest Marquise rank creatures, so it wasn't surprising that she had lost Han Sen so easily. Yun Sui felt cocky, but when the other students of Sky Palace flew past, they all looked at Yun Sui strangely. "I know I'm pretty, but you don't have to stare like that," Yun Sui thought. After a while, though, she felt that something must be amiss. She knew many of the people she was passing, and although she rarely went to the Xenogeneic Island, she never attracted this much attention on her way there. "Did something happen to my appearance?" Yun Sui touched her cheek and looked at her clothes. There was nothing wrong with her. She flew for a while longer, and people were still looking at her. She frowned and pulled out a mirror to look at herself. "Strange. There's nothing wrong with me. Everything is as it should be. I'm just as pretty, argh." As Yun Sui moved the mirror to check her face from different angles, a mysterious shadow suddenly appeared in the mirror. A smiling person was sitting behind. It was Han Sen. "When did you get here?" Yun Sui turned back to take a look. Han Sen was sitting casually behind her on the tiger, and it was now no wonder why people had been looking at her. Those people were not really watching her, though. They were looking at Han Sen. "When you took the tiger into the sky, I was already sitting atop it. Aren't you supposed to be taking me to the Xenogeneic Island? Is there something wrong with me being here? Have I misunderstood your intent?" Han Sen looked at her with a smile. "Nothing's wrong." Yun Sui blushed, refusing to look at Han Sen. It weirded her out that Han Sen had managed to catch up. Not even Thousand Feather Crane or Yun Sushang could match the Jade-winged tiger's speed. Han Sen had just become an earl, so there was no way he could move that fast. In truth, Han Sen did not have that speed, but he did have his rabbit shoes. They were faster than the Jade-winged tiger, even if they lacked the ability of flight. When Jade-winged tiger took off, Han Sen used the rabbit shoes to leap onto the tiger's back. He then hid his presence, so Yun Sui wouldn't notice him. Yun Sui was confused, not understanding what had happened. Jade-winged tiger was quite fast, and they arrived at the Xenogeneic Island shortly after. The Xenogeneic Island was comprised of many gardens, with each one containing a multitude of Xenogeneic creatures. They didn't look bloodthirsty, so it was like they were all tamed. Fitting with the theme of Sky Palace, most of them were of the flying variety. Yun Sui took Han Sen to her garden, and someone there welcomed them. Yun Sui told them to get back to work, then brought Han Sen into the garden alone. "What class of Xenogeneic mount do you want?" Available mounts run from Baron class all the way up to Marquise. They are already tamed, so they listen to people. She was actually asking Han Sen how much he was willing to cough up for a Xenogeneic. Han Sen thought and said, "The cheaper the better. Anything to substitute for walking." Han Sen was still new in the Geno universe. There were many creatures in the sanctuary that had yet to evolve. Han Sen did not need to waste his resources. Han Sen was going to kill Xenogeneics himself soon, anyway, and there was always the chance he could nab a beast soul mount. Those mounts would be far better than a tamed Xenogeneic. Yun Sui smiled and said, "Don't worry, my sister said I can give you the lowest possible price. You won't get prices like this anywhere else." Han Sen shook his head. "I just want one that can help me fly. I don't need one that is strong." When Yun Sui saw that Han Sen wasn't kidding, she thought for a minute. The cheapest flying mount is a Xenogeneic called a Jade Knight Crane. They are in every shop, but ours are different. You saw Brother Crane's Jade Knight Crane, yes? Normally, they are barren and hard to level up. But that one was Earl, and it came from us. "Sure. Give me one of those, then." Han Sen was not picky. It was just a riding mount, so it wouldn't be anything too special regardless of how much he paid. "You should go and pick one yourself. We have thousands of them. They are all the same price, and they are all just as good." Yun Sui took Han Sen to the area for the Jade Knight Cranes. Han Sen was remarkably surprised when he saw the birds swarming in flocks that looked like clouds. Sky Palace was a big faction. There weren't many places where you could see this many tamed xenogeneics in one place. Taming a xenogeneic was far harder than killing one. It would be easier to kill an Earl or Marquis xenogeneic than to tame a Baron xenogeneic. It was amazing that the sky had successfully done so this many times. Where did these xenogeneics come from? Han Sen asked, looking at all the Jade Knight cranes. Some were caught, some were raised. We will take you to Xinyuan Cave. There is an Earl there that you can tame. If you can catch it alive, it will fetch a far loftier price than selling the xenogeneic gene material, Yun Sui said.
Han Sen nodded.
He used his Dongxian aura to scan the Jade Knight cranes. If she was going to let him choose, then he might as well make the best choice that he could. He was going to pick the one with the brightest life force. Han Sen scanned them, and he found one among them that appeared to be extra strong. When he saw it, the creature was just lying down in the grass. It didn't appear to be as active as the others. Yun Sui, seeing Han Sen look at that Jade Knight crane, said, "That one is a Viscount." It was a Baron xenogeneic that was bought by a Viscount. It was later raised to become a Viscount itself, but after a grueling fight, its legs were cut off and its wings were damaged. It recovered from its wounds, but it is still disabled. Now, its flying speed is only Baron class. Also, it still doesn't have legs. Yun Sui stopped talking, but it was obvious what had happened. Can it fly while carrying heavy items? Han Sen asked, examining the bird. Yes, it is much stronger than Baron class Jade Knight cranes, but it has no legs and its wings are damaged, Yun Sui repeated. It can't fly any faster than an average Baron, and its fighting abilities cannot compare with a Viscount mount. I'll take him. Han Sen did not plan on letting the mount do any fighting, so it'd be suitable for simple travel. A damaged Jade Knight crane was not expensive, and it was just a little more pricey than basic xenogeneic gene material. Yun Sui gave Han Sen a very good deal. The Jade Knight crane was very tame, and Han Sen was quickly able to learn how to command it. He could control it in flight easily. Because it had no legs, it always landed on its belly. And because the wings were partially disabled, it never could fly completely straight. Its speed left much to be desired, as well. Fortunately, Han Sen did not have high expectations. So, after he made the purchase, he rode the crane back to his island. Jade Knight crane was flying again, and it looked excited to be doing so. It kept squawking, and with amusing dedication, it diligently took Han Sen to his desired destination. Poor thing. It got hurt because of its master, and then it was abandoned. And now he is okay and can obey commands. Many creatures with high intelligence can't do that.
Han Sen sighed.
Back on his island, Han Sen let the crane land. But before it touched down, Han Sen jumped off. The crane's belly hit the ground as it frantically flapped its wings. The creature had tried to keep itself level when it landed, but the attempt didn't go very well. Han Sen gave it some food and let it stay on the stone. Then, Han Sen returned to the house. Before he went to Xinyuan Cave, he wanted to come to grips with his powers. He took stock of his possessions. Earl Class Spell Geno Armament, Duke Beast Soul Rabbit Shoes, Earl Beast Soul Red Mist Mint Glove, and King Weapon Ghost Teeth Knife. With Ghost Teeth Knife there, his teeth knife skills would still be the best to use. Teeth Knife wouldn't have any breakthroughs, though, so he planned to focus on a different Geno art. Using the energy flow from the Jade Turtle spell, the feelings of Sky Palace, and some parts of Coin, he planned to make up a brand new Geno art. My Coin focuses on powers that suppress. Why don't I just modify Coin and make it better? But I can only use Coin, or a Geno art that looks like Coin when I'm in my dollar identity. Otherwise, people might take notice. So, if I can't make something too similar to Coin, what kind of Geno art should I make? Han Sen thought about it, and he soon came up with an idea. Jade Turtle spell focused on suppressing one's speed. Once you got hit with it, you could not fly. Han Sen wanted to use that aspect as a focus for his new Geno art creation. He wanted to merge elements of Sky Palace and Coin. As for modifying Coin, that was something he could do later. Han Sen kept testing his ideas in the room and learned a lot. Combining them wasn't proving too difficult. He created his new Geno art through repeated testing. After pulling an all-nighter, he formulated a prototype of his new Geno art. It was something he had no difficulty casting. All he had to do was improve the minor details of its design. Let's call this Geno Art Turtle, Han Sen decided. Because he could not find a target to use it on, Han Sen didn't know exactly how effective Turtle would be. Han Sen took a break to rest, and when it was daytime, he walked out the door. The legless crane was resting beneath a tree. Han Sen fed it again, then rode it to where he was supposed to meet with Thousand Feather Crane. Outside of Xinyuan Cave, Han Sen saw Thousand Feather Crane, First Day, and the Yun sisters. Yun Susang immediately apologized for her sister's presence. Suyi wants to follow us in our exploration. I will be in charge of her safety, so if something happens, do not worry. Do whatever you need to. Since she had said that, no one objected. They left their mounts outside and headed into Xinyuan Cave. Xinyuan Island looked like a small volcano. The volcano's entrance led them into a gigantic volcano cave world. The cave led off in a number of different directions, and there were swathes of xenogeneics inside. Xinyuan Cave xenogeneics were very special. The most special ones among them were called Xian Jade Spirits. Xian Jade Spirits could travel through walls and appear in any comber they chose. They were difficult to avoid. So, once people entered the cave system, they had to be careful. They could be attacked by Xian Jade Spirits at any time. At any moment, a mouth or claw could come shooting out of the rock. Brother Han, this is your first time in Xinyuan Cave. Be careful. Xian Jade Spirits can appear without any warning. We might not be able to help you in time if they get you, Yun Susang said. Han Sen nodded, and he opened his Dongxian aura. He kept everything envisioned in his head. Any movement within a radius of 10 meters would not escape his notice. They walked a mile into the caves without spotting a single xenogeneic, but Han Sen did not let his guard down. He kept the Dongxian aura running the entire time. Suddenly, though, Han Sen saw a black jade hand come out from the ground. It tried to grab Yun Suyi by her legs. The Xian Jade Spirit's nails were black like daggers. If it got hold of Yun Suyi, it could rip her legs off without much trouble. Because they hadn't met Xian Jade Spirits for a long time, Yun Suyi had dropped her guard. She was only a Viscount, as well. She was not strong enough to react with the immediacy required. Han Sen summoned spell in front of him and fired her guns. After the popping noise of gunfire, 2 of the Xian Jade's claws were broken by the bullets. Where the bullets hit, symbols were left behind. The Xian Jade jerked its injured hands away and retreated into the stone. It left no sign of its passing. The surface of the stone was perfect, as if the creature had never been there in the first place. Han Sen noticed he was able to feel where the Xian Jade hands would come from. There was thick stone and rock all about, but he felt as if he received a signal from beyond it. Han Sen could feel exactly where they were. Is this a power that spell possesses? Han Sen was shocked. When spell hit something, it was like she was placing a tracker. The tracker didn't deal damage, but it was very useful. Suyi, say thank you to Han Sr. Yun Susang nudged Yun Suyi with a hand. Yun Suyi was still a bit rattled, but she stepped forward and said to Han Sen, "Thank you for saving me. It's okay. Even if I hadn't struck, it couldn't have hurt you. I just wanted to find out the power of the Xian Jade Spirit."
Han Sen smiled.
He wasn't suggesting that Suyi was strong, but acknowledging that Susang was right beside her. There was no way the creature would have been permitted to hurt her, but Susang was surprised that Han Sen had reacted before she had. Han Sen had just become an earl, and if his reaction speeds were superior to theirs already, that was most certainly not normal. Yun Suyi looked at Spell with curiosity. Han Sen, is that your Geno armament? It is special. I have never seen one like that before. Thousand Feather Crane was just as curious. Prior to this, they had only seen Spell's armor mode. Her second mode looked like a person, and this was something they hadn't seen before. Han Sen smiled, but he did not answer the question. He asked that Xian Jade Spirit was not strong. Aside from being able to travel through stone, what else can they do? Thousand Feather Crane said that one was an Earl-class Ghost Claw beast. They aren't the strongest of Earls, but they are very fast. They can appear through the rock, so they are very dangerous if you are careless. Even cutting off the creature's claws won't kill it. They can regenerate. It's very annoying. If you want to kill it for good, you need to damage the stone it resides in. once it has revealed itself with the claws. Yun Susang said, "Ghost claw beasts are too fast. Most of the time, we can't detect their presence until it is too late. And if they miss or break their claws, they'll run away. Second chances are rare. So, when you want to kill one, you need two earls. One can cut the claws while the other pummels the body inside the stone." After that, Yun Susang struck a rock with her knuckles and said, "The Xinyuan rock is very hard. With our powers, we can only cut through an inch of the stone at a time." The ghost claw beasts raise their claws around 1 foot out of the rock. Then, they attack. "Thank you for teaching me," Han Sen said gratefully. They kept walking, and Han Sen felt as if the ghost claw beasts were right next to them. One was getting ready to attack again. It was the same ghost claw beast, and it wanted revenge. It kept following them, ready to perform a ghost claw slash upon them. But it had been hurt by spell once already, so it was exercising great caution. It didn't come too close yet, and it watched and waited for an opportunity from beneath the stone. "Be careful. There are xenogeneics up ahead," Thousand Feather Crane told them. He was up front. Han Sen looked forward, and he saw a blurry shadow. Without Thousand Feather Crane's warning, he would not have known that it was a xenogeneic. The group soon got close enough to see it clearly, however. It was a bug that was native to the cave, and it looked like a centipede. Its shell was of a bluish hue, and there was a face emblazed upon its back. It looked creepy. Earl Class Face Centipede. Be careful. Face centipedes appear in a group, mostly. They don't travel alone. Yun Sui explained this for Han Sen's benefit. As the others, there were no strangers to the cave. Face centipedes were quite common, and the sky were familiar with how they behaved. The face centipede soon saw Han Sen, and it came scurrying over. It let out a wretched sound that drew the attention and ire of more in the vicinity. "Get ready to fight." Thousand Feather Crane shouted and drew his sword. Yun Susang and Yun Sui wielded swords as well. First Day didn't draw a weapon, though. His hands gleamed with white light. He slapped the ground, leaving white marks on the dirt. His spirit covered an area that was 3 meters wide and brightened up the entire place. First Day slapped the ground another 5 times, and then he said something. Then, 6 spirits rose toward the feet of Han Sen and the others. Power entered their bodies. What a strong spirit. It increases power and speed by a lot. Han Sen was in shock. He looked at First Day, and he was really surprised that the shy Buddha could pull something like this off. Seeing Han Sen look at him, the Buddha man awkwardly glanced away. He said, "I was sent here to study when I was young. I practiced the truth spell of Sky Palace." "Very nice," Han Sen said. Ever since Han Sen had been forced to leave Disloyal Night behind, he hadn't seen much in the way of buffs and boons. Yun Susang and Thousand Feather Crane stood inside the radius of the spell to fight with the face centipedes. Their sword airs looked like clouds, and they moved like silk in the sky. It was very light and strange. The face centipedes were getting killed by the silk sword air. Their shells cracked under the force, and a few died immediately on contact. The path was very narrow, and since Yun Susang and Thousand Feather Crane had a handle on the situation, Han Sen didn't bother helping. Yun Sui wanted to fight, but she couldn't. She started to say something to Han Sen, and so she turned around. But she looked at Spell, who was standing next to Han Sen. Spell was transforming her pistols into a sniper rifle. The long weapon dropped into Spell's hands, and she pointed it toward Yun Sui and pulled the trigger. Yun Sui was frozen. Spell had moved too quickly for her to react. She saw a shining bullet fly out of Spell's rifle and was right past her face. Pang! The bullet hit the stone wall behind her, and the cracking sound hurt her ears. Yun Sui turned around to take a look. A hand bearing jade claws hovered behind her, inches from her neck. It was frozen in place. There was a bullet hole in the stone wall, and black blood seeped out of it. Xenogeneic Earl hunted. Jade Ghost Claw Beast. Xenogeneic gene found. An announcement played in Han Sen's head, but it was a shame he did not receive a beast soul. "Thank you." Yun Sui looked at Han Sen with a complex expression. This was the second time Han Sen had saved her, and this time, he had managed to one-hit kill a ghost claw beast by himself. Such reaction speed and powers were difficult to find amongst Earls. Han Sen was surprised. He was not surprised that Spell could kill the ghost claw beast, but that her pistols could turn into a sniper rifle. He knew that Spell herself could transform, but he hadn't known she could change her weapons. So, that means Spell can use any type of weapon? It might not have to be a weapon all the time either, Han Sen thought. He had simply commanded Spell to slay the ghost claw beast, and Spell had used her own judgment to select the sniper. It had greater power and bullet penetration. She now had 3 different weapons. There were the pistols, for short-range quickfire. The power was mild, but she could take a lot of shots in little time. The sniper had the longest range of attack, and its damage was quite devastating. It could penetrate through materials, but bullets took a long time to regenerate. The rocket launcher did not have the range of the sniper rifle, but it dealt AoE damage across a wide area. This took even longer to regenerate a round, though. The 3 of them had different functions and benefits. It was difficult to determine if one was outright better than the other. Depending on the situation, any of the weapons might prove more beneficial than the others. That was Spell's greatest strength. She could adapt to almost any scenario. Not long after Han Sen killed the ghost claw beast, Yun Sushang and Thousand Feather Crane finished off the 5 face centipedes. Han Sen went ahead and started digging into the stone. There was a monkey-looking jade monster inside, with its head blown wide open. It was the ghost claw beast. When Yun Suyi saw that Spell had targeted the creature's forehead, the sight shocked her. She hadn't expected Spell to possess that level of accuracy, allowing her to take aim at the felon's head while it was still inside a wall. They dug up the xenogeneic genes and kept going. The ghost claw beast's xenogeneic gene was a black skull. A piece of shell was the xenogeneic gene of the face centipedes. We have only just entered Xinyuan Cave, and already we have received rewards like this. We are quite lucky. We could go back now if we wanted to. Yun Sushang smiled. Finding a xenogeneic during the next part of their trip wasn't so easy. They walked for another 2 hours and found nothing. Han Sen, your geno armament is amazing. It looks like a person, and it can change weapons. What is her name?
Yun Suyi asked Han Sen. Spell, Han Sen sighed.
Good name. Maybe it was because Han Sen had saved her twice, but she was being much nicer to him now. She seemed quite keen on chatting with him. SSSHHH. Thousand Feather Crane hushed them. Everyone went quiet. Thousand Feather Crane put his ear next to the wall, which made the others catch their breath. If there was a Shin Jade spirit residing right there, Thousand Feather Crane was a dead man. Fortunately, that did not happen. He had been confident that no creatures lurked within the wall, and he was correct. After a while, he raised his head again and said with a look of importance, I heard a Xinyuan dragon. Hearing that name, everyone's faces changed. Yun Sushang frowned. How far? Is it coming for us? I think it is headed our way. Thousand Feather Crane looked serious. If it is us 5 versus a Xinyuan dragon, we won't win. Let's go back, First Day said. Yeah. Thousand Feather Crane and Yun Sushang agreed. Han Sen did not know what this new threat was, but he was fine with the idea of leaving, if that was the general consensus. When they started to retreat, First Day said, Xinyuan dragons are the strongest xenogeneics to be found in Xinyuan Cave. Those things are born marquees. We cannot fight them. Han Sen nodded, then he glanced down. Spell fired her pistols at Han Sen's feet. A ghost claw had just come out of there, grabbing toward Han Sen's feet. The bullets pierced through the enemy, prompting it to return to the rock. But there were more and more of the things emerging all around them. They were all thrust into danger. Yun Sushang wielded her sword quickly to protect Yun Suyi. Thousand Feather Crane and First Day used their powers to stop the claws that kept coming out. But the creatures seemed to be countless. Han Sen and the others were earls, but Yun Suyi was a mere viscount. She wouldn't be able to protect herself. Yun Sushang, Thousand Feather Crane, and First Day diligently did their best to protect her. This isn't right. Why are there so many ghost claws, all of a sudden? Yun Sushang said as she fought back the ghost claw beasts. The ghost claw beasts must know that the Xinyuan dragon is coming. They want to stop us from leaving, Thousand Feather Crane said. First Day said, not bad. These guys are just here to hinder and annoy us. We cannot get close enough to the walls to attack them, though. Slashing their claws off won't work, as they can quickly generate replacements. Pang! Spell used her sniper rifle to attack. The bullet penetrated the rock, and the hole sent blood squirting out everywhere. You guys protect Suyi. Draw them out, and I will have Spell kill them, Han Sen said as he ran. Spell had used her pistol to fire at many claws earlier, leaving spells attached to them. Now, that made them easier to detect. When they rose to the surface of the rock, Spell would shoot them before they could extend their claws fully. The sniper rifle's piercing power was wickedly strong, but it still took some time to generate each new bullet. 1 second passed between each shot, which made it difficult to keep up with the onslaught of creatures. Even so, watching her work was pretty awesome. Thousand Feather Crane protected Suyi as they ran. Spell fired a shot every second. With each squeeze of the trigger, a Ghost Claw Beast died. Xenogenic Earl hunted. Jade Ghost Claw Beast. Xenogenic Gene found. Obtained Jade Ghost Claw Beast Beast Soul. When Spell killed her 8th Ghost Claw Beast, Han Sen finally heard the announcement he'd been hoping for. He didn't have time to check out the Beast Soul right now, though, and neither could he dig up the bodies residing in the stone. They were all busy trying to run outside. Yun Susang and Thousand Feather Crane looked behind them, and they saw Spell shooting the Ghost Claw Beasts. She dropped each one with a single shot before their claws were even revealed. They had no clue how such a thing was possible, but they did not have time to ponder that. Spell killed many Ghost Claw Beasts along the way, but there were still too many of them. The group was not escaping quickly. The Xinyuan dragon is here. Thousand Feather Crane screamed, his face going pale. As his scream echoed off the walls, a strange noise came from deeper in the cave. A black shadow stretched toward them, filling the air with the smell of blood. The creature's scales were as black as ink. Its head had no horns, but the ears were fixed with black wings. Its belly had talons, like those of an eagle. It was coming his way, and black smoke billowed around it. It looked very creepy. The Xinyuan dragon was too fast, and there were still the Ghost Claw Beasts to fend off. Even if the Ghost Claw Beasts hadn't been there, Han Sen's group still wouldn't have been able to outrun the dragon. In a second, the Xinyuan dragon was a mere 20 meters away from them. It opened its maw and fired a plume of black smoke in their direction. The smoke blackened the passage as it came toward them. The Xinyuan dragon's breath is toxic. Do not breathe it in. Thousand Feather Crane shouted, and then a cloud exploded from his body. The eye on his forehead opened up and shone. The shining light made him stronger. The sky and the clouds are invincible. The sword can kill the sky. Thousand Feather Crane shouted. A white sword air surrounded his ancient sword, and he swung it forward. The white sword air sliced open the black toxic smoke. The sword air continued on until it struck the dragon's head. Then it was gone. You guys leave now. Thousand Feather Crane clutched his sword tight and ran for the dragon. His body was emitting clouds, and he flew forward like a fairy. Take Suyi. Yun Susang pushed Yun Suyi to first day. Then the eye on her forehead opened. A new sword air surrounded her ancient sword as well, and she won a fight beside Thousand Feather Crane. They lifted their swords and attacked together, breaking the Xinyuan dragon's breath. They stopped the advance of the Xinyuan dragon and fought it hard. The dragon could not do anything. So this is the power of the sky. When their third eyes are opened, they are far stronger. Han Sen watched in awe. Thousand Feather Crane and Yun Sushang's power could go up against a Marquise creature, and it seemed likely that they could actually kill one. But the Xinyuan dragon was no ordinary Marquise. Its scales were incredibly strong, and its power was just as impressive. Thousand Feather Crane and Yun Susang broke through the breath, but they could not break the scales. The snow-white sword air swung down across the black scales, but it could only leave behind a white scratch mark. Han Sen let Spell fire a few bullets at the Xinyuan dragon, but when the bullets hit the target, they shattered into dust. So strong! Han Sen shouted in his heart. Mr. Han, please take Suyi and leave this place, First Day said, as he proceeded to cast Truth Spell. The spells landed on the ground of the area, then surged forward to land on Yun Susang and Thousand Feather Crane. It helped buff their power and speed. Some of his spells hit the Xinyuan dragon, but those appeared to be futile. 3 elites were now in battle against the Xinyuan dragon, but that only seemed to make it angrier. A black light grew in the center of its black. The black light became dragon wings, and they gave it speed. The Xinyuan dragon flapped its wings, and its 10-meter-long body performed a loop in the air. Catcha! Yun Sushang could not dodge it. The dragon bit down on her sword, and then the sword broke. At the same time, the tail of the dragon was swinging towards First Day. First Day's body was glowing with white light. Truth spell gave him a bubble shield, but the tail obliterated it with a single strike. It sent his body flying against the cavern walls like a meteor. He screamed as its body slammed into the wall and cracked it. Then he coughed up blood. Oh no! It is a mutant xenogeneic. It has reinforced scales and a faster flying speed. Thousand Feather Crane moved like a cloud. He picked up Yun Sushang, waved a sword air, and broke the black smoke the dragon was exhaling. Spell, protect her. Han Sen told Spell, then pulled out Ghost Teeth Knife. The rabbit shoes appeared on his feet, and he gripped his knife with the red mink gloves. Han Sen moved like a shadow, moving right behind the Xinyuan dragon. Using Tusk, he swung at the back of the Xinyuan dragon's neck. His attack only produced a dong noise. Not even the Ghost Teeth Knife's teeth power could break through the Xinyuan dragon's scales. It could only leave a scratch mark on the scales. And although his knife possessed teeth power and emitted a dangerous purple smoke, it still seemed useless. That hard? Han Sen was shocked. Don't fight it. Run. It is a mutant xenogeneic, and its body far exceeds its actual level. Thousand Feather Crane slashed to draw the Xinyuan dragon's attention while he shouted. But the Xinyuan dragon was too fast. It flapped its wings and became a black horse directly in front of Thousand Feather Crane. Thousand Feather Crane's sword air collided with the horse, and the sword air shattered. Still, he could not hurt it. Seeing that the black horse was about to grab Thousand Feather Crane, he shouted. He held Yun Sushang tighter and took off in flight. He moved so fast that it looked like he teleported away from the attack. But Thousand Feather Crane's face turned pale. His hands trembled as he gave Yun Sushang to Yun Suyi. Sushang and Suyi, you guys leave with First Day. Han Sen and I have got this. Roar. The Xinyuan dragon's attack had missed. It turned around and went after First Day, who had just stood up from the rubble. First Day gritted his teeth. His legs shone, like he was stepping on a lotus. And he cast a spell, which left a glowing symbol behind with every step he took. Every symbol caused him to accelerate. But he still could not dodge the Xinyuan dragon's attacks, and the talons were in front of him. First Day held out his palm, and a true light came out of it to counter the talon. The gold light and the black light collided against each other. First Day was sent flying, though, all the way back into the stone. The true light was broken. The dragon was cruel, and it went for First Day once again. Thousand Feather Crane's sky eye shone. He was bleeding, but he summoned a cloud air. The sword air became a white dragon, and it roared. It went for Xinyuan dragon. A black dragon and a white dragon surged toward each other. Then the Xinyuan dragon flapped its wings to become a black horse and avoid the engagement. It was going for Yun Sushang and Yun Suyi. Careful, sister. Thousand Feather Crane's face went gray. This strike had cost all his power, and there was nothing he could do to save them. Yun Sushang knew that they weren't fast enough to dodge the attack. She summoned an ancient sword and her sky eye shone. She slashed a sword air up at the dragon. Han Sen was currently sprinting, and the rabbit shoes gave him the speed of a dragon. He went behind the dragon and slashed it on the side.
Young.
Two noises sounded at the same time. Yun Sushang heaved blood as she was sent careening away. Han Sen slashed the dragon's stomach again. He left a mark, but he didn't see flesh. The Xinyuan dragon turned to Han Sen and breathed out smoke. Han Sen fell back and swung the ghost teeth knife, breaking the black smoke. Xinyuan dragon spun around and put its attention back on Yun Sushang. Thousand Feather Crane was coming, but he was not as fast as the dragon. First Day cast True Light, but his attack didn't reach the dragon. He screamed, "He's too fast." What First Day said gave Han Sen inspiration. He had just created Turtle, and he had almost forgotten that it specialized in bringing down a creature's speed. Xinyuan dragon was almost in front of Yun Sushang, and Han Sen's legs sent him leaping forward at incredible speed. He gathered up power in his hand and brought a slap towards the black horse. The rabbit shoe's speed was equal to that of the dragon, and in no time at all, a jade-white palm came pressing against the dragon's head. Thousand Feather Crane and the others did not think Han Sen's palm would achieve much. They knew Han Sen was wielding a king-class knife, and they knew he had practiced teeth knife. If those skills could not damage the dragon, what could a palm do? Thousand Feather Crane and First Day were out of range, and Spell kept firing her pistols ineffectually at the dragon. Yun Susheng obviously thought that she was about to die, so she pushed Yun Sui away. Then, her body exploded with a cloud. She was going to fight the dragon with everything she had remaining. Pang! Han Sen slapped the Xinyuan dragon's head. Then, the horse-looking dragon fell out of the air. It was like Han Sen had knocked him down to the floor. Thousand Feather Crane and the others were all in shock. They looked at the Xinyuan dragon that was now lying on the ground. And there, where Han Sen had delivered his strike, was the image of Turtle Spell. The Xinyuan dragon slammed into the ground and roared in rage. It flapped its wings as it tried to get back into the air, and that was what surprised Yun Susheng the most. No matter how much it flapped its wings, the Xinyuan dragon could not get airborne again. It was like a duck, attempting to take off. Ultimately, despite all its frantic flapping, it couldn't get off the ground. Yun Susheng's mouth dropped wide open as she stared at the dragon. This was too powerful, and they were all gobsmacked. What are you gawking at? Run! Han Sen yelled at them, snapping them out of their daze. Yun Susheng pulled Yun Sui away. First Day followed from behind, casting True Spell on the dragon. Thousand Feather Crane was attacking, too, but they were all drained by now, and their attacks lacked the vigor they'd possessed earlier. The dragon was really angry at Han Senator. It completely ignored First Day and Thousand Feather Crane's attacks. It tried coming for Han Senator. It did not fly to him, and instead it wriggled and crawled. It moved forward steadily, if much more slowly. Han Sen, seeing the Xinyuan dragon's speed, became very happy with how slowly the dragon was now moving, and there was no need for Han Sen to feel threatened. There was another pang noise as the Xinyuan dragon broke Thousand Feather Crane's sword air and First Day's True Spell. It continued coming for Han Sen, venting smoke from its mouth.
Han Sen moved.
He dodged the thickest section of the smoke. He slashed with his knife and cut through the smoke. Then, he moved to the dragon's side and slapped the dragon's face. Another turtle spell manifested on the dragon's face, dropping its speed yet again. Han Sen moved like a shadow. He put away his ghost teeth knife, opened his hands, and repeatedly slapped the dragon in the face. The Xinyuan dragon was so slow. It couldn't catch up with Han Sen and his rabbit shoes, so there was nothing to keep Han Sen from continuing to be slap it in the face. Images of the turtle spell covered its face. Thousand Feather Crane and First Day watched Han Sen beating on the creature. The fleeing sisters stopped running. Their mouths opened wide, unable to quite fathom what they were seeing. The Xinyuan dragon was acting as if it was stupid. It stood where it was, allowing Han Sen to slap it nonstop. It was getting slower and slower, and the scene played out as if it was in slow motion. Han Sen felt very good hitting it, and as he did so, he thought to himself, "Slap your turtle, son. Fly. Slap your turtle, son. Run." First Day and the others could guess that Han Sen's slapping was some sort of Geno art that slowed down the speed of an opponent. First Day had a Geno art like that, but it hadn't worked on the Xinyuan dragon when he tried it. They were both Earls, yet Han Sen's Geno art was far more effective on the Xinyuan dragon. It confused First Day. Han Sen did not think his turtle would be that great. It could stop a foe from flying, and it could slow an enemy down. Surprisingly, it worked on a dragon that was a Marquise and a mutant. But the strangeness soon wore off. Turtle came from the Jade Turtle spell. The Jade Turtle was created from the remains of an old deified turtle shell. The power was deified. Han Sen also included his experience under the suppression of the deified Sky Palace leader, then threw in coin for good measure. With Han Sen's current power, Turtle might not have been able to subdue a king-class enemy, but it worked just fine on marquises or dukes. And Turtle could stack. Han Sen continued to slap the Xinyuan dragon, and in the end, the dragon was as slow as a snail. It was like a slow-motion scene on TV. The Xinyuan dragon was so angry that its eyes almost popped from their sockets. Its gaze was burning with hatred. If stairs could kill, it would have murdered Han Sen a long time ago. The dragon might only have the speed of a turtle now, but its power had not been affected. It could still exhale toxic air, but it could not move, and it could not hit the nimble Han Sen with the smoke. Han Sen kept using teeth knife to slash at the dragon's neck. He struck the beast hundreds of times, and knife lights were everywhere. Not long after, the dragon's neck started to bleed. The blood gleamed visibly in the knife light. Thousand Feather Crane and the others could tell the dragon was going to perish, so they didn't help out. They didn't want to steal the kill. They did, however, commit to clearing the ghost claw beasts that were still nearby. Yun Suyi saw the knife light reflecting off the blood and stared, deep in thought. Padong! The screams of the Xinyuan dragon suddenly cut off as Ghost Teeth Knife severed the dragon's head. Xenogeneic Marquise Mutant Hunted. Xinyuan Dragon. Xenogeneic Gene found. Obtain Mutant Xinyuan Dragon Beast Soul. After killing the Xinyuan dragon, the crew left Xinyuan Cave. Han Sen didn't feel very well, and First Day and Yun Su-heng were injured. They couldn't keep going. They also had to carry out the dead bodies of the Xinyuan dragon and Ghost Claw beasts. The Xinyuan dragon's body was very useful, and it also had xenogeneic genes. They didn't want to waste it. Han Sen cut open the Xinyuan dragon's head under Thousand Feather Crane's supervision. He took out a brain orb, which was the xenogeneic gene of this creature. The brain orb was around the size of a fist. It looked like a black crystal. The strangest thing was that there was a Xinyuan dragon with wings inside it. When Han Sen obtained the brain orb, an announcement played. Obtained Marquise Mutant Xenogeneic Gene. Insufficient Marquise genes. Cannot refine. Han Sen was surprised, and he thought, what does that mean? Will absorbing that mutant gene require other genes as some sort of base? Han Sen put away the brain orb for the moment. He gathered up the other spoils and left the cave alongside the others. Han Sen, which geno art did you use on the Xinyuan dragon? You made it unable to move. That is something extremely powerful, Yun Sui said to Han Sen as they walked. It is a geno art that is used to reduce the speed of enemies. It is called Turtle, Han Sen answered. Hearing that name, Yun Sui and the others looked surprised. Yun Sui smiled and said, this name is good. And you really did turn the Xinyuan dragon into a turtle. Thousand Feather Crane and the others were shocked. They didn't expect a skill used to reduce speed could be that effective. It wasn't an ordinary geno art, that was for sure. After a short discussion, Han Sen sold the Xinyuan dragon to Yun Su-heng. Yun Su-heng called her people over from the shop to come and claim it. Han Sen was only going to take the xenogeneic genes of the dragon and a few of the Ghost Claw beast with him. Then, he rode his legless bird back to his island. On his way home, Han Sen looked at his new beast soul. Ghost Claw Beast, weapon. Han Sen summoned the Ghost Claw Beast soul. It was indeed a weapon, and it looked very similar to the Ghost Claws. Ghost Claw had a 3-foot-long handle with a claw-like blade on the end. He wasn't quite sure what kind of weapon it was. He put away the Ghost Claw blade and summoned the Mutant Xinyuan Beast soul. Mutant Xinyuan Dragon, flying type. After Han Sen summoned it, he felt rather depressed. He had thought he would grow awesome wings behind him, but that wasn't the case. When he summoned it, it wasn't as intimidating as the black wings that had grown from the dragon's back. Instead, a small pair of Xinyuan wings spawned near Han Sen's ears. They weren't broad wings. They were just a pair of small ear wings. They looked beautiful, but Han Sen did not think they would be very useful at all. Han Sen tried flying with the wings, and it worked. They were very fast. They were almost as good as the rabbit shoes. The rabbit shoes only increased his movement speed on the ground. They did not improve his flying speed. The dragon wings would improve his speed in the air, so they were very suitable for Sky Palace. This beast soul could turn out to be very useful. There might be times he would have to fight while in the air. He couldn't just use rabbit shoes to fight then, and so having the dragon wings would make things easier. But when he used the dragon wings, he did look rather funny. Han Sen melted the Ghost Claw Beast genes, and then he drank the broth. He felt the power spread through his body. He felt cold, as if he was being washed in a rush of cold water. Earl Xenogeneic Genes +1. Han Sen had 9 xenogeneic materials in total from the ghost claw beasts. After he ate them, he ended up with 9 xenogeneic gene points. Mutant Xinyuan Dragon's xenogeneic gene, however, could not be melted. Thus, Han Sen couldn't eat it. It was just as the announcement had said. Han Sen did not have enough Marquis genes, so he couldn't refine the mutant xenogeneic gene. Han Sen rested for the night, and then there was nothing to do the next day, either. White Jade Jing had not opened yet, so there was no need to go there. As a result, he had nothing to do. So, he planned to go and kill xenogeneics inside Xinyuan Cave again. This time, alone. He wanted to fill up his Earl gene tallies so that his Geno-Arts would have an easier time breaking through. Han Sen rode the legless crane to Xinyuan Cave. He left it outside and entered the cave alone. Thousand Feather Crane and the others hadn't come, so Han Sen only had to worry about himself. He used his rabbit shoes to run deep into the cave at a speedy pace. Perhaps it was because the rabbit shoes were too fast, but the Xin Jade spirits did not make an appearance. He ran for 3 hours. He ran past where they killed the Xinyuan dragon, and there was still no sign of any xenogeneics. Han Sen didn't dare slow down, as he wanted to draw out whatever creatures he could. He met some people hunting xenogeneics, people from Sky Palace. They were in a group, and only Han Sen had entered alone. When the Sky Palace students saw Han Sen running around by himself, they were shocked. Xin Jade spirits could appear at random, so it was dangerous to venture inside alone. When students came there to hunt, they would always bring a partner. It was rare to see something like Han Sen venturing inside all alone. As Han Sen walked forward, he didn't see any Xin Jade spirits, but he heard a voice calling for help from deeper inside the cave. Han Sen looked in that direction and saw a Sky Man running toward him. There was an ant behind him with a head as big as a cat.
Han Sen summoned spell.
She lifted her sniper rifle and fired a bullet, blowing the xenogeneic's head off from a few hundred meters away. Xenogeneic Viscount hunted. Jade Ant. Xenogeneic gene found. Run. The Skyman came running, shouting at Han Sen as he came. Why run? It's dead, Han Sen said. The Skyman continued running, and he cried out, It's not just one. There are many. How many? Han Sen asked. Many. Many. Run. The Skyman ran past Han Sen. Han Sen did not ask anything further, as he saw jade ants pouring out of the cavern behind the Skyman. There were too many to count. That is a lot. Han Sen was not scared. Instead, he was happy. His eyes turned bright. Without Han Sen even needing to issue a command, Spell swapped her sniper rifle for an RPG. She placed the rocket launcher on her shoulder, put herself into position, and pulled the trigger. A rocket shot out and slammed into the center of the horde of ants. Boom! A white light exploded amidst the horde of ants. A mushroom cloud was generated, and it rocked the entire cavern. Announcements played in Han Sen's head over and over, countless times. Han Sen heard himself receive 2 jade ant beast souls. They slid into his sea of soul. Awesome! Han Sen felt great. He hadn't felt like this in a long time. The Sky Fellow stopped and stared in shock. He was frozen by what he had just witnessed. Spell fired another rocket, and it landed amidst the jade ants. Countless more died, and roasted corpses were scattered all about.
Des astérisques men.
Your gear is powerful. The man came running back. He looked at Spell as he spoke. It's all right. It's strong, but I'm also just lucky, Han Sen said smarmily. Spell required 3 seconds to generate a rocket after each use, but after firing 3 or 4 of them consecutively, the jade ants that were still alive retreated back into the tunnel and did not return. The guy didn't object to what Han Sen said. He thought it made fine sense. But he still looked at Spell with hefty interest and said, My name is Yu Jing. What is yours?
Han Sen, Han Sen sighed.
You are the Han Sen that was carried into Sky Palace by Uncle Crane? Yu Jing asked in surprise. Han Sen shrugged his shoulders. What could he say? You look different from the stories I've heard, and your geno-armament is strong, Yu Jing said. I see you are an earl. So why are you calling Thousand Feather Crane an uncle? Han Sen asked. Yu Jing smiled. Uncle Crane is a student of the 10th leader. I am the 6th elder student. I'm more like a grandson, to be honest. At the very least, I should call him uncle. After that, Yujing went on to say, Han Sen, are you interested in cooperating with me? No, Han Sen said immediately. Yujing was disappointed. After a while, he said, don't you at least want to hear my proposal? No thanks, Han Sen said. Then he walked towards the jade ants that were killed. He was going to collect their xenogeneic genes. Yujing understood, but his face turned red. He couldn't keep himself from explaining, so he said, Brother Han, it isn't like that. I can deal with Viscount jade ants. The reason I ran was because there is an earl inside there, and it is a mutant ant queen. So, I had to run. A mutant ant queen? When Han Sen heard this, his eyes opened wide. Han Sen had received Xinyuan Dragon's xenogeneic gene, but he had been unable to absorb it. He wanted to understand what the difference between ordinary genes and mutated genes were. If he could get his hands on an Earl mutant gene, he might just be able to figure it out. Yeah, I was unlucky. I found a jade fruit tree, and just as I was about to claim some jade fruit for myself, I was started to see a jade ant nest right next to it. I was unable to collect the fruit, and I almost died. I used everything I had, every item I owned, to keep myself alive. I lost everything on this excursion. Yujing sighed. And then, Yujing suddenly smiled at Han Senior. Brother, I think you are so strong. You must be a hero. Why don't you and I go collect the jade fruit and split the haul between us? No offense, but why can't I just go there by myself right now? Han Sen smiled at Yujing. Yujing smiled, but it quivered with a touch of nervousness. He responded, Brother Han, you have only been in Sky Palace for a few days. You don't know much about Xinyuan Cave, do you? Although Xinyuan Island does not look big from the outside, it is very large on the inside. Even if you were down here for a whole year, you wouldn't be able to explore every nook and cranny of this realm. The cave system is complex, too, so you'd likely find yourself lost. Without me, it is highly unlikely that you'll find the fruit within the next few months of searching. Do you really want to waste your time in such a fashion? That makes sense. Okay, we'll split the haul of fruit in half, Han Sen said as he dug through the corpses of the jade ants. The rocket had been too powerful, and the jade ants were only viscounts. Most had been blown to smithereens, to such an extent that the xenogeneic genes were utterly annihilated. When he was done, Han Sen had only been able to collect a dozen xenogeneic genes. Yujing was so happy to hear this, and he said, Brother Han, you won't regret cooperating with me. Can your Geno armament destroy an Earl Jade Ant? Han Sen searched around for a few more jade ants that had not been destroyed, and then went in search for the jade fruit tree with Yujing. Truthfully, Han Sen's goal in this venture was not anything that rested on the boughs of the tree. Any fruit he collected would be a decent bonus. What he wanted to do the most was kill that jade ant queen. Yujing was not lying. The jade fruit tree's location was well hidden. They traversed a number of complex tunnels for over an hour before finding it. The tree was behind a hidden alcove and cave. Brother Han, do you see the rock beside the tree? That is the exit of the ant nest. If we get too close, the ants will come pouring out. I examined it earlier, and there were at least 8 Earl Jade ants. There was also an ant queen. What are you going to do? Yujing looked worried. He was afraid Han Sen would back out. We have a deal, don't we? We split the haul of fruit in half, and the jade ant xenogeneic genes are for me, Han Sen said. Yujing immediately said, yes. It does not matter who kills it. You can have the xenogeneic genes. Yujing said that, but inside he thought, the mutant jade ant queen? That thing is as strong as a marquise. With 7 or 8 earls alongside it, and the other ants too, I think you'll end up running off without laying claim to a single xenogeneic gene. Okay, that's the deal then. You go over there, Han Sen said coldly.
Go.
How? Yujing asked with shock. Walk there. You can fly or crawl, if you so prefer. Just go over and draw those ants out.
Han Sen smiled.
Draw them out? Your plan is to draw them out, kill them, and collect the fruit?
Yujing looked at Han Sen coyly.
Do you have a better idea? Han Sen smiled at Yujing. It was easy for Han Sen to collect jade fruit. With Han Sen's rabbit shoes, he could pick the tree clean before the ants even emerged. But Han Sen wasn't there for just the fruit. Picking it and then leaving was not on the agenda. Brother Han, are you really confident in this? Yujing asked, staring at Han Sen. Yes, Han Sen answered with certainty. Yu Jing hesitated. He gritted his teeth, grabbed Han Sen's hands, and said, "Brother Han, I place my life in these hands of yours. You have to be careful and see my safety is secured. Go. I will have spell fire when the time is right." Han Sen patted Yu Jing on the shoulder and smiled. Yu Jing ran towards the jade fruit tree. Before he could get close, ants began to pour out from under the rock. It was like a black river headed for him. Yu Jing quickly came running back as Han Sen commanded Spell to ready a rocket. Then, she fired behind the man. Boom! The white light exploded behind Yu Jing. It killed a lot of jade ants. Announcements kept running in Han Sen's head, declaring he had killed a Viscount Jade Ant. He also heard himself receive a bunch of beast souls. Han Sen had battled ants before, and he had always received armor beast souls. But these jade ants only gave him pet-type beast souls. That disappointed him quite a bit. That was because pet-type beast souls were annoying. If you wanted to use them effectively, you'd have to get them to combat mode. He had found himself in possession of many low-tier pets in the past. Jade ants could spit corrosive gas, but the range was short and the gas was slow. Before the ants could get to Han Sen, Spell had fired 2 rockets and laid waste to them. Suddenly, a few gold shadows emerged from the stone nest. These ants were twice as big as the ordinary ones. They had wings, and they glimmered with a golden light. They flew straight at Yu Jing like shadows. "Brother Han, help me," Yu Jing shouted at Han Sen as he ran. Seeing that 7 or 8 Earl-class jade ants were about to catch up with Yu Jing, Han Sen realized that Spell's rockets were going to be too slow. She had killed many Viscount ants, but more and more of them were approaching. Spell. Han Sen took control of her, ditching the rocket launcher and pulling out the sniper rifle. Spell lifted the sniper, aimed it above Yu Jing's head, and pulled the trigger. A bullet of light was fired, and it struck one of the Earl ants. That power tore through the ant's wing and perforated its shell. It fell from the air. Xenogeneic Earl hunted. Jade ant. Xenogeneic gene found. The announcement played in Han Sen's head. Yu Jing was approaching excitedly, saying, "T, Brother Han, your geno armament is strong. Hurry, fire a few more shots and finish them all off." 1 second later, Spell raised the rifle again and fired. Unfortunately, she missed this time. She failed to hit the Earl Jade Ant that was flying quickly towards her. Yu Jing's excited voice turned to one of crying. "Brother, can you aim better?" Seeing Yu Jing draw even closer, Spell swapped her sniper for a pair of pistols. Then, she fired them into the sky. A series of shots were heard. She missed a few times, but she still managed to hit 2 Earl Jade Ants. The pistols were not as powerful as the sniper, though, and the bullets only punched holes in the shells of the creatures. They didn't kill the ants. "Spell!" Han Sen shouted. Spell ran towards Han Sen and turned into a pair of pistols that flew into Han Sen's own hands. Han Sen's left and right hands clutched the spell pistols. He fired them into the sky simultaneously. Each bullet came launching out with a stunning muzzle flash. And again, there was a pang-pang noise. Han Sen fired 7 bullets, and all 7 hit their desired target. 7 Earl ants were hit. Han Sen's bullets were as strong as Spell's. The only difference was that Spell's bullets were fueled by the raw power of the story of genes, while Han Sen could create bullets from any geno art he possessed. After the 7th shot, the 7 Earl Jade Ants each had a bullet hole inside them. The wounds were not deadly, though, and the ants could still fight. But they spiraled like planes losing control. They crashed into the ground and could not get airborne again. Small turtle symbols were glazed across each of them. Han Sen's bullets were now powered by turtle. It stopped the ants from flying, and it reduced their speed. Han Sen kept firing his guns at the Earl ants on the floor. Their shells splintered and broke as their bodies oozed blood. Han Sen killed 1 ant immediately. Xenogeneic Earl hunted. Jade ant. Xenogeneic gene found. "Shoot them! Shoot them!" Yu Jing shouted with excitement. The Earl Jade ants had been robbed of their ability to fly, and they were slowed dramatically. They were no longer a threat to Yu Jing. Han Sen fell back, repeatedly squeezing the triggers. The joy of firing a gun was incomparable to the wielding of a knife. Han Sen killed another Earl Jade Ant, and then there was a noise. A pure black ant flew out from under the stone, with a shell that was wreathed in golden symbols. This ant was smaller than the earls, but its presence was far scarier. It flapped its wings and flew towards Han Sen. Its claws were like blades, and they came swinging towards him. The gold light came past Han Sen like a knife light. Han Sen moved and evaded the gold lights. Han Sen then fired his guns, but the Jade Ant Queen was too fast. It was able to dodge every bullet. The Ant Queen rose into the air, shrieking. The gold symbols on the shell and wings glowed. Its speed and power were increasing, and it was going to attack Han Sen again. Run. This mutant Ant Queen is as strong as a marquise. We cannot fight it. Before Yu Jing could finish his warning, Han Sen had drawn another weapon and gone running towards the Ant Queen. The bullets could not catch up with the Ant Queen, but the rabbit shoes could. Han Sen rushed by the gold lights and used the ghost teeth knife on the Ant Queen, breaking its shell and leaving a big mark on it. Blood came out, as did a plume of purple smoke. There was no need for Han Sen to fight anymore. The purple smoke was spreading quickly across the Ant Queen, ripping its wounds apart and sending blood spewing out of it like a burst dam. Han Sen was too lazy to wait, though. He slashed again and cut the heavily injured Ant Queen's head clean off. Mutant xenogenic Earl hunted. Jade Ant Queen. Xenogenic gene found. There was an announcement, and it made Han Sen very happy. It really is a mutant xenogenic. The Jade Ants did not back off just because the Ant Queen was killed. They all came rushing at Han Sen like kamikazes. Han Sen gave Spell back her body, and she quickly got to firing rockets at the droves. Meanwhile, Han Sen went on to finish off the rest of the Earls himself. After many more ants were killed, the rest decided to return to their abode below the stone. Han Sen did not seek to pursue the fight. He harvested the bodies of the Ant Queen and the 8 Earls. He also collected many Viscount xenogenic genes. Yu Jing saw Han Sen picking up all those xenogenic genes and felt depressed. He had to comfort himself by saying, "It is lucky I can at least get half of those jade fruits. This guy is scary, and he is nothing like the stories people tell about him. He doesn't seem like the sort of fellow who would need to be carried into Sky Palace. I should have totally fought for a greater share of this haul." There were 14 jade fruits on the tree. Han Sen and Yu Jing each took half. Han Sen received 7, and then he asked Yu Jing what benefit they could provide. "Brother Han, how about we cooperate in Xinyuan Cave and kill more xenogenics together? We can split the gatherings in your favor, 60-40. I guess I could settle for 70-30. 80-20 is a possibility too. You should think about it." Han Sen did not continue his hunt in Xinyuan Cave. He took his spoils and left. He flew the legless crane back to his island. Right then, he wanted to find out the purpose of mutant xenogenic genes. He did not need to do any more hunting at this point. He gave a few Viscount Jade ant bodies to the legless crane. He didn't collect the xenogenic genes inside the bodies, either. The crane was able to gobble them all up. The legless crane happily swallowed the first, and it made a grateful noise to Han Sen as it ate. Han Sen went to the stone house and pulled the bodies out. He cut open the Ant Queen's body and picked up a piece of flesh that looked like jade. That meat was transparent, and not unlike shrimp. Something gold shone from it, and looking into the gold light, you could see it was the face of the Ant Queen. Earl genes insufficient. Cannot refine mutant xenogenic genes. As Han Sen held the Ant Queen's xenogenic gene, he received the same announcement. "I have 9 Earl genes, and here there are 8 Earl-class jade ants. I don't know if that'll be enough." Han Sen cut open the 8 Earl ants and picked up the xenogenic genes within. Han Sen gave the Ant Queen's body and the bodies of the others to the legless crane for food. Bubble was Han Sen's only other companion right now, so there was nothing else he could feed. Han Sen had an Earl pet beast soul and 7 Viscount beast souls, but he did not fancy feeding them at all. Having a pet in Sky Palace would not be something you could easily hide. If others discovered that he possessed one, explaining that might be difficult. Jade ant xenogenic genes were like a fist-sized cut of meat. After Han Sen melted them down, it was like a barbecue. The oil sizzled, and he sprinkled it with salt and pepper. It tasted better than barbecued lamb. Earl genes +1. After eating a piece of the ant meat, Han Sen felt very alive. He was energized, and he felt as if he could have sex 10 times in one night. After eating 4 pieces of that meat, his belly was bloated. The meal was very filling. Han Sen did not want to wait before eating the rest, though, so he switched on consume and quickly digested the ants that were in his stomach. By the time he was done, he had finished all 8 slabs of ant meat. In total, Han Sen now had 17 Earl genes. But when he picked up the Ant Queen's mutant genes, it still said he did not have enough Earl genes. How many Earl genes do I need? I can't figure out the number. Han Sen felt depressed, but it was almost time for White Jade Jing to open again. He did not have time to venture into the cave just yet, so he'd think about what to do once he returned from White Jade Jing. Practicing in White Jade Jing was the most important thing he could do right now. He had 3 Geno arts that needed to play catch-up and reach Earl status, so White Jade Jing was very important. It was why Isha had sent him here, after all. Of course, Isha had sent him there only intending for him to level up the story of genes to Earl status. And that was something he had already accomplished. Han Sen, are you here? The day White Jade Jing opened, someone was calling for Han Sen before he had woken up. The voice was Yun Suyi's. Han Sen went to brush his teeth, then opened the door. Yun Suyi was wearing a white dress, and she was standing just outside the door. The cut of the dress showed off her attractive legs. White Jade Jing is opening today. Let's go.
Yun Sui blinked at Han Sen.
Yeah, Han Sen answered. He turned to wake up the legless crane that was snoozing beneath the tree. Let's take my jade-winged tiger. It is faster, Yun Sui said. Sure. Han Sen nodded, letting the legless crane continue to sleep. Han Sen sat behind her, and the jade-winged tiger flew towards White Jade Jing. Han Sen, you are a student of Knife Queen. You must surely know many knife skills. I've learned a few, but I fear there is something amiss. If you ever have the time, could you teach me a thing or two? Yun Sui turned around and smiled at Han Sen. I can't teach you, but we can practice together, Han Sen said. Okay, then. After White Jade Jing closes, I will take you over to my place. Yun Sui smiled in a flirty way. Han Sen and Yun Sui went to the White Jade building, and they split up when they reached the 4th floor. Yun Sui said she'd wait for Han Sen. This time, Han Sen stopped on the 6th floor. He had decided to practice there this time. He had to practice his other Geno arts, and he did not know if his body could withstand the jade air of the 7th floor without using petrify. But the 6th floor was full of students. It filled up soon after, and people were everywhere. Brother Han, you are here. Yu Jing walked in and saw Han Sen, then went over to sit down beside him. Han Sen wanted to sit by himself, but he didn't seem to have that option. People were everywhere on the 6th floor. Fortunately, Yu Jing did not mention anything about them killing xenogeneics together. He quietly asked, Brother Han, will you participate in Sky Palace's exam? What exam?
Han Sen asked.
This wasn't high school, so what exam could there be? The exam is annual. There are no penalties to failing, but if you do well, the elders and the leaders might take notice of you. If you reach the top 3, you also earn a prize. If you receive a good score, the elder might take you as a student, even though you are an outsider. But of course, you are already Knife Queen's student, but the top 3 rewards are still great. What are the rewards? Han Sen asked. Treasure is granted to the top 3. If you are number 1, you will also have permission to enter the Holy House. There, you may select a Geno art. Such a thing would be of great benefit, Yu Jing said. Han Sen, hearing that, was quickly disinterested. He still had his own Geno arts to practice with. Even if the Sky Palace Geno arts were powerful, he doubted he'd find the time to learn one of them. Yu Jing noticed Han Sen was not interested, and so he looked around and whispered to Han Sen, Brother Han, if you have time, I would like to talk to you about the exam. Alone. Perhaps we can cooperate there. Han Sen looked at Yu Jing, and Yu Jing performed a gesture to be quiet. Han Sen realized that Yu Jing must be asking him to cheat in some way. Of course, no one else could hear that. And then Yu Jing spoke to Han Sen again. This time, he did not want to discuss the exam. White Jade Jing opened and jade air came out of the jade wall. When it did, everyone focused on refining it. Han Sen used jade skin to absorb the jade air. They both possessed the same jade word, so perhaps they might have some compatibility. When Han Sen used jade skin, the jade air moved quickly throughout his body. Jade skin absorbed the air quickly, much faster than the story of genes.
Det asteriske men.
They really are connected.
Han Sen taugt.
Han Sen changed to the Dongshin Sutra, then the Blood Pulse Sutra, and he noticed that they refined the jade air much more slowly than the story of genes did. And they were far inferior to jade skin. It looks like I need to practice jade skin first. Han Sen stopped wasting time and focused on practicing with jade skin. He wanted to evolve with that, first and foremost. Jade air was everywhere, but it wasn't dense enough. Han Sen's absorption speed was fast, but jade skin's evolution was not going great. He realized that the galaxy sand had been far superior. Before the second jade air erupted, Han Sen went up to the 7th floor. His jade skin was compatible with the jade air, so he knew he could survive on the 7th floor with it. But when he reached the 7th floor, he did not see Thousand Feather Crane or Yun Su's hang. Not even First Day was there. There was a young, lonely guy there on the 7th floor, though. A jade sword rested on his knees. The man did not look at Han Senator, he just sat where he was, eyes closed, uncaring for the world around him. Han Sen was not a fan of talking either, so he found a corner to sit in and waited for the second wave. The jade air on the 7th floor was far purer than the jade air on the 6th floor. It was better for his jade skin. No others had come to the 7th floor, so the environment satisfied Han Sen a great deal. It was far better than the overcrowded 6th floor. He thought to himself, if I had known I could survive it, I would have come here the first time it erupted. Han Sen waited for the second eruption, and when it came, he cast jade skin and absorbed the jade air. The jade air on the 7th floor was far denser than the lower floors. Han Sen felt the jade air flow inside him, and it helped refine his jade skin and infuse it with his bones. It made Han Sen feel like jade himself. There were some amazing feelings going on in Han Sen's skeleton. Rather than giving him the chills, the scary jade air actually made him feel hot. It felt like he was inside an oven, and his bones were being baked. Han Sen knew that this was just an illusion, though, and that was because the jade air did not suppress him. It made him feel more alive. Han Sen practiced jade skin, and not long after, his jade skin began to feel strange. It became purer. This was exactly what Han Sen had hoped for. Without thinking, Han Sen cast jade skin. But on the 7th floor, an odd image appeared on the smooth jade wall. The sun and the moon appeared in the image, and white bones as well. Sword air cut through them. It was like a god appearing in the sky. Buildings rose up, like steps into the sky. Between the clouds was a mysterious city. It was very well hidden, and you could not see much. All those images appeared across the jade walls, and they made the jade air purer. The arrogant young skyman opened his eyes. His eyes shone as he looked upon the jade wall. He looked shocked. The jade wall's image started to change, and the city there grew closer. There was a king obeying the city. He took a step, then knelt. 10 steps, then he prostrated himself. It was like a believer walking to a holy place. When the arrogant young man saw that the jade wall was showing the city, and the city was revealed from behind the clouds, his face changed. 5 cities? The arrogant young man's eyes looked bright. He stared at the 5 cities the wall displayed. Many kings bowed before the cities, but none dared to step in. It was not clear what happened after that, though. The kings that were nearest to the city were dying, and they soon disappeared. The gates of the 5 mysterious cities remained closed. It was like they had been closed since ancient times. Han Sen felt that the jade air had become very pure. It allowed his jade skin to ascend in level very quickly. But the jade air's time of eruption was far too short for satisfaction. When the jade air dispersed, Han Sen wanted more. What is your name? Han Sen opened his eyes and saw the arrogant man looking at him. His voice sounded cold. Han Senator, what is your name? And do you want something? Han Sen asked, are you taking part in the exam this year? The man did not answer Han Sen's question and just asked his own again. Han Sen thought the man was quite strange, so he willingly answered, I don't know. Maybe. Maybe not. Oh. The man looked at Han Sen and then left, headed downstairs. Is he crazy? Han Sen shrugged his shoulders, then went downstairs as well. When Han Sen reached the 6th floor, The man had vanished. He saw Yu Jing looking around, however. Yu Jing approached Han Sen as soon as his eyes found him. Han Sen, are you free? Can we talk? Yu Jing said, I don't think so. I have something to do. Come over to my place tonight, Han Sen said, recalling that he was supposed to meet up with Yun Suyi. Okay, Yu Jing agreed, then walked downstairs with Han Sen. When they reached the 4th floor, Yun Suyi was waiting there for Han Senator. She smiled at him. Brother Han is meeting up with a woman? It is best that I leave. Yu Jing saw Yun Suyi, smiled back, and then said goodbye. Why are you with him? Yun Suyi asked, frowning. Why? Is there a problem? Han Sen asked with confusion. She looked as if matters with Yu Jing weren't so simple. That guy is greedy. He plays tricks, and he cheats. He does not have a very good reputation in Sky Palace. I recommend staying away from him, if you can. Yun Suyi told Han Sen some stories about things he had done. Yun Suyi then brought Han Sen over to her island. Her island was far bigger than his. She had a pavilion and even a garden with a fountain. It was quite a comfy place, really. Here, then, help me examine this skill. Which part of it is incorrect? I always feel as if there is something amiss with it. Yun Suyi brought Han Sen into a pavilion in the garden. She invited Han Sen to sit down and drink some tea. Han Sen answered, Show me the knife skill, and I'll see if I can identify the issue. Yun Suyi nodded. Her beautiful body walked to the fields. She pulled out a knife and began her performance. Han Sen watched her and frowned. Yun Suyi hadn't been practicing the skill for very long, so she wasn't experienced at all. If there was a problem, it would be because of her lack of practice. She could not even be considered a beginner with the skill. Han Sen realized that she had not used a knife before, so she did not have much in the way of knife skills. It was clear to him that she had only started practicing this as a way to talk to Han Senator. It was an excuse. Yun Suyi had not just selected a random skill to trick Han Sen, though. It'd have been too obvious if she had done that. The knife skill she had selected was called Under the Sky. It was created by a Sky Palace swordsman. He wanted to create a knife skill for Sky Palace, but in the end, there were 7 problems he was unable to solve. That was why he called the knife skill Under the Sky, because it was not on the level expected of the sky. Many people wanted to modify Under the Sky. The 7 little issues had been fixed over the years by a series of genius students, but there was still one problem no one could overcome. Because of that, they were unable to make it a Sky Palace skill. Yun Suyi selected this skill in the hope that Han Sen could identify the issue that was thus far unfixable. If she did that, it'd work as an icebreaker, allowing her to get closer to him. If she had to keep looking him up all the time, with no real reason, her feelings would be revealed. Han Sen could tell Suyi had just started practicing with a knife, but he was still fascinated by the knife skill. It was amazing in its own right, and it was vastly different from teeth knife. Han Sen thought the knife skill had the same potential as teeth knife, but when Suyi performed it, there was clearly a problem with it. And also, the power in the example was quite weak. It was just one little problem, but it detracted so much from the technique. The resolution of a battle between 2 elites rested on the smallest details, so the slightest edge could make the difference between life and death. Han Sen, can you tell that there is a problem with this skill? I feel as if something is wrong. After Yun Suyi practiced, she returned to the pavilion and consulted Han Sen. Because Under the Sky was still not perfect, Sky Palace did not really allow its students to practice it. Only a select few had knowledge of the skill's existence. She knew Han Sen had never seen the skill before, and so that was why she chose to use it. But even if the skill was perfected, it wouldn't be made available to all students. Most people would only hear the name. Han Sen didn't think much about it. He just believed Yun Suyi had yet to practice it right, and that was why there was an issue. He didn't think there was an issue with the knife skill itself. This technique is very complicated, so I don't understand it yet. Could you perform it again for me? Han Sen did not ask to see the scroll. The skill was teeth knife sequel, so it was unlikely many students had what it took to practice with it. He was just an outsider, so asking to read the actual Geno art could have been very rude. Yun Suyi merrily agreed to perform Under the Sky again. There are some problems, certainly, but I don't really understand them. I'll think it over when I head back. Han Sen did not focus on the use of knives, so he wasn't a knife master. He could not promise that he would fix the problem. But there were some common aspects threading every skill, and Han Sen had a great deal of knowledge and experience. So, he planned on trying to solve it. Tackling the problem would be good for his own knife practice, regardless of whether he succeeded or failed. After all, Han Sen used knives more than any other weapon these days. And he had Ghost Teeth Knife, which was a king weapon. He wanted more knife skills. Yes, please. Yun Sui smiled and took Han Sen back. She planned to use this excuse to talk to Han Sen about knife skills again. She wanted to get closer to him. When Yun Sui returned home from taking Han Sen back to his island, Yun Suseng appeared in her garden. Sui, what have you done? Nothing. I had a problem with a skill, so I asked Han Sen for help. I took him home right after. Yun Sui acted as if she did not care. Yun Suseng looked at Yun Sui and said, the problem with Under the Sky cannot be fixed through simple observation. If he can do that, then the elders wasted their lives in what they have done. Yun Sui blushed, and she said, Sister, why are you spying on our conversations? Sui, do not forget your identity. You should know what you can do and what you cannot. There is a line. Han Sen is not of the sky. Wanting something impossible will just get someone hurt. Yun Suseng sighed. After Han Sen returned to the island, he saw his legless crane resting beneath the tree. He put some meat in its bowl, then went into the house to practice Under the Sky. Under the Sky was very delicate. The technique did not have much flair, and it wasn't overbearing, like Teeth Knife. But when you used the skill, it was like a rippling ribbon that could not be cut. The knife skills looked random, but they were all connected. It could trap an enemy without them noticing. With it, Han Sen might even be able to control the enemy as if they were a puppet. Under the Sky was not too dissimilar to Heavenly Go or the Dongxian Sutra. It was still quite unique, of course. Heavenly Go focused on one's formation. The Dongxian Sutra was excellent when it came to prediction. Under the Sky focused on direct control. Under the Sky made one a queen amongst ants, allowing the user to rule the battlefield. Whoever made that knife skill, to have given it a name like that, must have been thinking of this. But there was a problem with the knife skill which reduced its effectiveness significantly. In order to properly control the enemy, the skill had to view them as nothing. And that was where the problem began. When Han Sen watched Yun Sui make use of it, he could tell where the technique had originated. It had to have stemmed from Sky Palace.
Han Sen had guessed correctly.
Sky Palace had outer sky powers, and it came from the textless book. The person that created Under the Sky had practiced with the textless book. He used that as a basis, and with his knowledge and talent, he formulated the rest of the knife skill. Understanding the textless book wasn't necessary to practice Under the Sky, though. If it was, then what was the point? Very few could actually practice with the textless book, after all. Because of this, the skill lacked the textless book's power as a base, and the control power was quite weak. It wasn't the best. It created a dual-sided problem. People who couldn't practice the textless book also couldn't learn this knife skill to its true potential, but people who could practice the textless book didn't need to learn this skill. It was a bit of a shame. Under the Sky had been abandoned because no one had found a way to overcome this problem. The modifications of a number of geniuses weren't even enough. Han Sen wasn't very good at knife skills, but it just so happened that Under the Sky's problem was something Han Sen was very familiar with. He had allowed the outer sky powers to enter his body on the road to the sky. The forces that he felt impressed him greatly. Added to that, he was proficient with the Dongxian Sutra and Heavenly Go. Thus, fixing the issue would not be too difficult for him. But Han Sen had only observed the knife skill. He didn't have the scroll, so he couldn't learn it properly and apply his solution to the matter. After thinking it through, Han Sen decided to give Yun Sui a call. He asked if outsiders were allowed to learn Under the Sky, but she said no. It was a flawed knife skill, but it was connected to the textless book. Therefore, not just anyone could come and learn it. Yun Sui was allowed to learn it because the skill was originally created by the Yun family. She could study it herself, but she could not pass it on to others. Han Sen was disappointed. He had agreed to help her because he thought the skill would suit him. He wanted to learn it himself. Han Sen was disappointed he was not able to learn the skill. He apologized to Yun Sui and told her he could not fix it by merely watching. That night, Yu Jing came to meet with Han Sen. Brother Yu, speak your mind. Han Sen had learned quite a bit about Yu Jing from Yun Suyi. He did not harbor any prejudice against the man, though, so he treated him like a normal person. Yu Jing checked to see if they were truly alone, and he said, Brother Han, if you do not care for the rewards of the exam, how about you help me out? With your power, you can surely win first place. If you can help me, I can provide you a reward that is worth even more. Are you saying you want me to cheat? Han Sen understood what he was getting at. Haha, I'm only talking about helping each other get what we both want. Yu Jing laughed. Han Sen suddenly thought of something, and so he told Yu Jing, I am afraid I am unable to help you. I will be taking part in the exam. That's okay, but if you change your mind, you can always call me. Yu Jing was visibly disappointed, but he did not say anything about it. After he left, Han Sen called Yun Suyi and asked, Suyi, is Under the Sky in the Holy House? There is a copy in there. Yes? Why? What do you want? Yun Suyi asked with surprise. If I get first place in the exam, I can ask for Under the Sky as a reward, yes? Han Sen asked. That is correct. After saying that, Yun Suyi thought of something and blushed. I see. Okay, then. Han Sen hung up. Yun Suyi had confirmed his guess, so he was going to join the exam and see if he could nab first place. If he was able to, he'd pick Under the Sky. Yun Suyi was still holding the phone, deep in thought. Her cheeks were red, and she smiled and thought to herself, is he going to the exam because of me? All to get Under the Sky. There were still 2 weeks to go before the exam. White Jade Jing opened again the following week, and Han Sen had plans to slay a few more Earls and Ageniacs to level up his gene tally. He still wanted to learn the truth about mutant genes. Han Sen did not plan to go to Xinyuan Cave this time, as that place was far too complicated. There were too many Xian Jade spirits around, and they were tough to kill. Han Sen got his hands on a Sky Palace map, and he looked over places he could go to hunt Xenogeniacs. After a time of deliberation, he decided on going to Old Night Island. Old Night Island's Xenogeniacs were fast, and most of them could fly. Earls did not like going there, as it was difficult to slay the inhabitants of that island. Han Sen, however, was not afraid. No matter what happened, his rabbit shoes and his dragon wings could give him the speed he needed. Catching an Earl would not be difficult, either. After Yu Jing confirmed Han Sen's participation in the exam, a new thought came to him. There aren't many special people in this year's exam. With Han Sen's power, he can get into the top 5 with ease. I can take advantage of that. His reputation is weak, and so people don't know his true strength. I can earn money through this. Yu Jing concocted a long scheme. Old Night Island was very big. There were mountains, forests, and even oceans. Han Sen went there and chased a flying bird. He caught up with it and cut its head off. Xenogeniac Earl hunted. Forest bird. Xenogeniac gene found. Han Sen collected the Xenogeniac gene from the corpse, then started a fire. He immediately got to eating. The legless crane flapped its wings, having brought over a few branches. Bubble was hopping all over Han's senator. It was weak, so it couldn't help much. With this forest bird, that marks the 8th Earl in 4 days. This is no faster than going into the Xinyuan Cave.
Han Sen felt terrible.
Old Night Island was not as good as Han Sen thought it would be, and the Xenogeniacs he managed to find were fast. The place was so large that it took a long time just to find a single Earl. Han Sen felt as if his plan had completely failed. Han Sen gave the bird's body to the legless crane, and he cooked the Xenogeniac gene. It was a liver this time. It tasted lovely, and it had a pleasant aroma, too. Earl gene +1. After eating the whole liver, Han Sen's Earl gene tally reached 25. Han Sen brought out the Ant Queen's mutant gene. He was used to hearing the announcement saying he did not have enough genes yet. But this time, Han Sen did not hear that wretched announcement. Do I have enough Earl genes now?
Han Sen grinned videlu.
He quickly started trying to cook the Ant Queen's gene in the pot. Han Sen hadn't been able to cook the Ant Queen's meat before, but now it was boiling. It made Han Sen very happy. After a while, the Ant Queen's meat was cooked. Han Sen ate it, and he felt a power course through him. After Han Sen ate all the meat, he did not hear any of his genes increase. He looked at his stats, and it still said he had 25 Earl genes in total. Eating the Ant Queen did not seem to have increased anything. But the power of the Ant Queen's meat was now inside Han Senator. It wasn't refined, and it was coursing through Han Sen's vessels. The power kept traveling through him, until eventually it waned and disappeared. In Han Sen's head, a shocking announcement played. Earl-class xenogeneic geno art obtained. Ant Queen mark. Mutant genes don't actually increase genes? They give geno-arts instead? Han Sen thought to himself, and then he followed the path the powers had taken through his body. It was then that he discovered a gold symbol on his body. Han Sen had seen this gold shape on the Ant Queen's body. When this spell began to glow, the creature's power increased. Han Sen tested it out. Lo and behold, the Ant Queen's mark was very effective. It made Earls as strong as Marquises. That meant the Ant Queen's geno art did not need to be practiced, and despite that, Han Sen could be as strong as the creature had been. Han Sen was so happy. If he found any more mutant genes, he could get the geno arts from the mutant xenogeneics he defeated in battle. He wouldn't even have to practice with them to become as proficient as possible. The strongest thing about this new option was that the geno arts came from creatures of a different species. Ordinary people could not learn xenogeneic geno arts. That was what was so special about them. Even though Han Sen could simulate power with his Dongshin Sutra, he could only replicate a fraction of their abilities. That was because their bodies were different, so fully accurate simulation was impossible. It was just like Consume. If Han Sen hadn't turned into an ant, he wouldn't have been able to learn the ability, and Han Sen had still needed to practice Consume. Now he only needed a mutant gene to learn the geno art of a xenogeneic, and because he did not need to practice with it, that made things even better. If I can kill a king class or deified mutant xenogeneic, does that mean I can learn the skills right away? Han Sen thought this could be tremendously powerful, but the Xinyuan mutant dragon's xenogeneic genes were Marquis class. He needed to refine Marquis genes before he could do anything with that one. For the time being, he could not make use of it. There was still a while to go before White Jade Jing opened. Han Sen planned to keep killing xenogeneics to earn Earl genes. If he met a mutant xenogeneic, he might learn another xenogeneic geno art. Yu Jing, you really won't regret this? A group of sky men surrounded him, and they looked surprised. I won't, Yu Jing said with certainty. Good. If you wish to give us your money, we won't refuse. According to our struck deal just now, if Han Sen can win 10 times in a row in the exam, we lose. If he loses just once, then we get all your money. A skyman laughed. Many students of Sky Palace struck this deal with Yu Jing. One of them laughed and said, Yu Jing, you are bringing this upon yourself. Do not take it out on us if you lose everything. That Han Sen had to be carried up the road to the sky. If he can win 10 times, that means all our Earl brothers are rubbish. Someone patted Yu Jing on the shoulder and smiled. Thanks. If you have any more great deals to strike, you should seek me out. Yu Jing coldly laughed in his heart. It's only 10 rounds. Unless Han Sen is unlucky enough to face off against a strong enemy in the beginning, he should be able to reach the top 5 with ease. Especially with his power. Getting into the top 100 will be nothing. But Yu Jing still felt nervous in his heart. This was a very big bet to make. While it was a high risk, there was also a high reward. Winning the gambit meant he would end up with 10 times his total wealth. If he lost, though, he'd go bankrupt. Yu Jing knew Han Sen was strong, but he was still nervous. When the exam matchups were settled, he took a look at Han Sen's schedule to see who he'd go up against. When he looked at the schedule, Yu Jing froze. His face grew pale. There was no color in him at all, and he almost passed out. The few Sky that had made a bet with him approached. They looked rather cocky. The leader smiled, touched him on the shoulder, and said, Yu Jing, you are unlucky. That monster bamboo is taking part in the exam, and he is Han Sen's 6th enemy. You are very unlucky. I don't think God can save you now. Pack up your stuff. We'll be repoing everything you own soon enough. The group of Sky smiled before taking their leave. Yu Jing was still standing there, pale as a G. He wanted to die. Why would this happen? Why would Lone Bamboo take part in the exam? He doesn't need to. Yu Jing did not understand how he could be so unlucky. If it was any other Earl student, he believed Han Sen stood a firm chance. he would have had a high probability of winning. But Lone Bamboo made Yu Jing feel powerless and hopeless. Lone Bamboo was a student of the seventh elder, but he had broken a rule. It was a very bad one to break, too. He was stripped of his title as a student and imprisoned. There, he was tortured. His imprisonment was not a death sentence, but it might as well have been on one. Lone Bamboo was put in a sad dream. That dream kept repeating his sad life for 10,000 years. Once that time passed, he was allowed to wake up. Ordinary creatures wouldn't live long enough to wake up and have the dreams end. Even if they did, having the same heartbreaking dream repeat for 10 millennia would be too much. They'd be driven insane by the repetition. Lone Bamboo slept in jail for 10 years before waking up. After he woke up, he went up to Sky Palace and knelt before it. Then, the doors opened. The leader had not accepted a student for 1,000 years, but he decided to accept Lone Bamboo. Then, his cheating life started. He practiced with the textless book, and he was able to go to the 5 cities and 12 buildings. No one was as good as him. Even Thousand Feather Crane, who received the Holy Gourd's blessing, still lost against him. And he lost even after using his best sword skills. After that, no one fought against Lone Bamboo. Marquises and dukes would not underestimate him either. No one could imagine how he had managed to wake up after only 10 years. But even so, it was difficult to imagine what he might have been through. The leader of Sky Palace said Lone Bamboo could become deified. He did not express any doubt about the possibility, and so he obviously had faith in him. If the word strong was used to describe a student of Sky Palace, people would not think of the elders. Instead, they'd think of Lone Bamboo. Lone Bamboo still wasn't a Marquis yet, but he never took part in the exams. Even the Marquis class students could not interest him. He had no interest in fighting them. Yu Jing looked shocked and bitter. He felt unlucky. He thought he could get rich, but now he was going to be bankrupt. The students had not seen Lone Bamboo fight for the past few years, so no one had expected him to suddenly join the exam. Han Sen stayed on Old Night Island for 6 days. He killed 11 earls and a Geneiks. But White Jade Jing was almost ready to open, so he left the island and went there. When he arrived on the island, Han Sen took a good look at the White Jade building. After doing so, he was shocked. He thought he'd only be able to see the one White Jade building, but now there were 12 such constructs on the island. At the end of the buildings, between the clouds, were cities. He could not see what resided in them, but he could most certainly see the 5 cities. Han Sen was not as clueless as he had been when he first arrived there. He understood much about the White Jade Jing now. Normal Sky Palace students could see 7 White Jade buildings, assuming they understood a bit about it all. If they could see 10, they'd be regarded as geniuses. If they could see 12, they'd be the smartest of the entire generation. If they could see all the buildings, that was something that only occurred once every 10,000 years. Sky Palace had existed for 1 billion years, and fewer than 100 had seen all 5 cities. That was how profound this was. Han Sen didn't feel anything, though. He did not know how he could see 12 buildings and 5 cities. He was quite confused. But when he practiced in the White Jade building's 7th floor, he understood something when the jade air turned pure. Although he could see 12 buildings, he was still planning on going to the first building to absorb the jade air. That place was perfect for an earl, he believed. He planned to bring Jade Skin up to Earl before exploring the buildings beyond. When Han Sen reached the 4th floor, Yun Sui came straight to him to talk. She looked worried.
Han Sen.
My sister and Uncle Crane are waiting for you on the 7th floor. They wanted me to tell you that, if you came, you should go and see them. Even if you aren't planning on practicing on the 7th floor, go and see them. What is it? Han Sen asked with confusion. The jade air is going to start, so go to the 7th floor. When it ends, Brother Crane will tell you the details, Yun Sui said. Okay. Han Sen nodded and went straight up to the 7th floor. When Han Sen disappeared up the stairs, Yun Sui sighed and thought to herself, God is being unfair. Why would you have to meet Lone Bamboo? What is Lone Bamboo thinking? What is the point of him joining the exam? But quickly Yun Sui thought, but maybe that's okay. It's the thought that counts. It does not matter if you don't reach first place to get under the sky. I won't think any less of you. Han Sen reached the 7th floor, and there, he saw Thousand Feather Crane, Yun Sushang, and First Day. The arrogant young man was not there on this day, though. Seeing Han Sen there, Thousand Feather Crane invited him over. He asked, "Are you joining the exam?" Han Sen nodded and said, "I signed up. I'm planning on joining." Thousand Feather Crane had a wry smile, and he said, "I'm afraid you will have a tough fight ahead of you." "What is it? Is someone big joining?" Han Sen asked with a smile. Thousand Feather Crane told him that Lone Bamboo was taking part, and then he explained Lone Bamboo's story. He also told Han Sen about the time he was beaten by Lone Bamboo. He didn't hide anything, but the way he said it was different than the way you would describe an ordinary student. Thousand Feather Crane talked about Lone Bamboo as if his strength was already legendary. "Perhaps you won't believe all this, but when I fought Lone Bamboo, I felt as if I was going to lose by just standing in front of him. When I fought him for a while, it felt as if he was teaching me something. After that fight, my sword skills improved, and I was able to achieve what I have up to this point," Thousand Feather Crane said. Thousand Feather Crane started to say something more, but the jade air erupted. The four of them focused on absorbing the jade air, which had become unusually strong around Han Senator. The jade air eventually turned back to normal, and there was no more pure jade air to take in. Han Sen was more sure about his line of thinking now. When the first jade air ended, Yun Suyi came up to the 7th floor. There, they all discussed the exam and the unexpected entrance of Lone Bamboo. "On your 6th fight, you will encounter Lone Bamboo. That will be a hard fight. I am worried for you, but I will admit I am looking forward to witnessing it. If you are going to fight, I am going to watch." Thousand Feather Crane smiled. "I agree with what Brother Crane says," First Day said, while clasping his hands together. Han Sen curiously asked, "What did Lone Bamboo do to suffer the nightmarish trial of torture?" Han Sen knew that torture like that was worse than being killed. It was a miracle that Lone Bamboo was able to wake up in 10 years. That was something that had never happened in Sky Palace before. Nightmare was a deified xenogenic dream beast power. Ordinary people could not resist it, especially after they had experienced the nightmares for a while. The elders do not talk about it. They avoid the subject. "We can't say for sure what happened. We only know that he broke the rules," Yun Suseng said. After talking for a while, Han Sen only heard the words strong and very strong. He also heard the words extremely strong, but that wasn't very useful. So, Han Sen did not keep any of that in mind. He did not think he was invincible, but weak or strong. He'd have to engage the man in battle if he was to find out. There was no point wasting any more time thinking about it. When the second jade air came, Yun Suyi went back to the 4th floor. On the 7th floor, Han Sen absorbed the second deluge of jade air. He thought his jade skin was coming along quickly. After 10 more rounds of jade air, he imagined he could bring it up to Earl class. It was a shame that the jade air only happened twice a week. It wasn't a process he could rush. After counting the time, he realized it would take 2 or 3 months. Going from Viscount to Earl that fast would be something of a miracle for most people. After leaving White Jade Jing, Han Sen went to Old Night Island to resume hunting. He didn't care about anything else right now. Getting more genes and leveling up was better than anything else he could do. There was only a week left before the exam, though. There was not much time, and Han Sen wanted to max out his Earl genes before attending the exams. Just as Han Sen was preparing to take the legless crane to the island, Yun Suyi jogged over to him. "Han Sen, are you going back to Little Jade Island?" "I am going to Old Night Island to hunt xenogenics," Han Sen answered. "Can you take me there? It doesn't sound as dangerous as Xinyuan Cave, and I am sure I can protect myself." "I won't take the loot, but I would certainly like to accompany you," Yun Suyi said.
Han Sen agreed.
Old Night Island wasn't too dangerous, and if she wasn't going to take any loot, bringing her along would do no harm. Seeing Han Sen agree, she looked visibly delighted. She smiled and said, "Old Night Island does not permit Earl-class mounts, so I won't be riding Jadewing Tiger. Can I ride atop your Jade Knight Crane? He is strong. 2 people can sit on him, sure. He is just a little slow."
Han Sen smiled.
"It is okay to be slow." Yun Suyi blinked. When the legless crane took off, Han Sen hopped onto its back. Yun Suyi followed. The legless crane had limited space atop its back. They sat together, shoulders touching shoulders. It made Yun Suyi blush. 1 crane and 2 people disappeared into the clouds. The legless crane flew a few hundred miles inland once they reached the island. And despite all the time it took, they were unable to locate an Earl Xenogeneic. Han Sen missed little uncle at times like this. If he was there, they wouldn't have to go out in search of the Xenogeneics. The Xenogeneics would come out in search of them. While they were looking for Xenogeneics, something shone atop a mountain. Han Sen quickly went there with Yun Suyi. The mountain was like a sword, raised 800 meters into the sky. There were some red coral plants growing across it. The light they saw was the glittering of those plants. When Yun Suyi saw the plants, she looked to be in shock. She said, "This is an Earl-class Xenogeneic plant. It is called blood coral. Xenogeneics love to eat this, as it is great for their evolution. They are eaten when they grow to the size of a hand. This one on the peak is 3 meters tall, and yet it hasn't been eaten by a Xenogeneic. That is strange." Han Sen looked at the red coral and said, "Ah, that's why it hasn't been eaten. There is a strong Xenogeneic that owns it, and so all the other Xenogeneics don't dare come close. I don't see any Xenogeneics around." Yun Suyi looked around to confirm, but she still saw nothing. It was so quiet around, and there were no weak Xenogeneics either. Han Sen pointed at the red coral and said, "Look at the red coral. It is there."
Yun Suyi followed Han Sen's finger.
She looked, and then saw a stick. It was not really a stick, though. It was a red bug that blended into the red coral. It was similar to a mantis, and it was munching on the red coral. It is an Earl-class blood god mantis. It is 1 foot long, so it isn't physically large. But it is very strong for an Earl-class foe. As she spoke, Yun Sui's face changed. "I know. This mantis is guarding this red coral because he wants to use its power to evolve. He doesn't want to be a marquis. He wants to be a mutant. Kill it before it eats the red coral." Han Sen was very pleased to hear that, so he smiled and said, "If it wants to evolve, then let it." Yun Suyi wished to say something, but seeing Han Sen smile was comforting. She felt safe. She couldn't bring herself to say anything. If Han Sen said things were okay, then she couldn't keep herself from believing him. The blood god mantis ate the red coral slowly. They waited for 1 hour, and after all that time, the mantis had only eaten a small part of the plant, but its body was glowing like a polished ruby. "Han Sen, you are a crystallizer, but you are also Knife Queen student. Will you marry a crystallizer or a rebate?" Yun Suyi asked jokingly. "I have a wife. She is the same race as me," Han Sen answered lackadaisically as he looked at the mantis. Yun Sui's face fell. She looked extremely disappointed. "Why didn't you bring your wife?" "My kids are young. She needed to take care of them, so she stayed at home," Han Sen answered. "You have kids?" Yun Sui's eyes opened wide. "Yes. I have 2 that are biological and others that are adopted," Han Sen answered. Yun Sui's heart was broken. She found herself struggling to breathe. She looked at Han Sen and sighed. She didn't say another word for a long time. The body of the blood god mantis was only 1/10 of the size of the plant it was munching. It ate slowly, but when it ate a bit of the coral, its belly did not swell. Its body did glow strangely, however. Before it finished eating the red coral, another aspect of its body changed. The shadow of a red reaper appeared on it. Its hands held a scythe, like a tool to harvest souls. The mist on the shadow was getting stronger, and it looked as if it was set to become solid. "It's evolving. Will it become a marquise or a mutant?" Han Sen asked as he looked upon the blood god mantis. "Spirits are just substances formed of light, smoke, and air. They aren't really solid. When they become marquises, they won't grow any more solid than they were originally. They will only gain power. Look at the red god mantis. It's not becoming a marquise. It's mutating," Yun Sui said. "It is good to be a mutant. I love mutants."
Han Sen smiled.
The blood god mantis red smoke was getting heavier. The red smoke reaper could be seen clearly now. At this point, it was hard to distinguish from an actual creature. The next second, Han Sen saw the red reaper wave its scythe towards the red coral. It broke the rest of the red coral, and then the red smoke on its body became a vortex. It sucked all the scattered pieces into it. When the red coral entered the whirl, the red reaper's smoke became thicker. That was particularly true of the scythe in its hands. Its smoke form began to solidify, and before long, it had turned into a crystal blade. The blood god mantis body was shining. The light glowed through the Red Reaper. Han Sen was staring into blood god mantis body, focusing on the blood air that swirled inside. It is going to finish mutating. Now is the best chance, Yunsui said. There's no rush. Let's keep watching. Han Sen wanted to see what the blood god mantis geno art might be. He wanted to see how strong it was. After 2 hours, the blood god mantis finished the mutation process. The Red Reaper became smoke, then drew back into its body. It vanished from sight. Blood god mantis body did not grow large from ingesting the coral. It was still 1 foot long, and its body still looked like ruby. Then, all of a sudden, it flapped its wings and squealed. It suddenly came for Han Sen, fast as a red shadow. Perhaps it had noticed Han Sen and Yunsui a while ago. It might have refrained from attacking then due to the fact that it was undergoing the evolution process. Once it was done, it now fancied killing them.
Spell, Han Sen sighed quietly.
Then, Spell appeared before him in her ladle-like form. She wielded 2 pistols, and she fired at the blood god mantis with both. Pang! Pang! 2 bullets hit the blood god mantis, but they didn't break its shell. They only left 2 spell markings on it. Blood god mantis squealed with anger. Its body turned into a red shadow, and it leaped at Spell. The arms of the mantis swung like scythes, and they were going to cut her. Spell moved quickly, evading blood god mantis' attack. She held her hands together and summoned a rocket launcher. Then, she fired a shot at the blood god mantis. Han Sen frowned. He didn't know why Spell was using a rocket launcher right now. The rocket launcher was stronger than the pistols, yes, but it was too slow. With the speed of the blood god mantis, the creature could easily dodge. And yes, blood god mantis did indeed flap its wings to dodge upwards. It got well clear of the rocket. It then resumed its approach to Spell. Spell retreated, still clutching the rocket launcher. The blood god mantis continued to advance, but the rocket that had gone by suddenly swung around like a heat-seeking missile. It hit the mantis in the back. Boom! There was an explosion, and blood god mantis body was sent flying away. Its shell was covered in a number of small wounds. The rocket must have damaged its shell when it detonated. But those wounds were nothing to the mantis. They only made it angry. It squealed, then jumped back at Spell.
Des astérisques mènent.
The round that leaves a mark can track an enemy's movement. It alters the course of the rocket. I wonder if the bullets can have a similar function? Han Sen thought to himself. Swiftly, Han Sen's question was answered. Spell turned the rocket launcher into a pair of pistols again. Her legs were crossed as she dodged blood god mantis' attack. It was like she was performing a beautiful and elegant dance. In that elegant dance, Spell's pistols fired continuously. It did not look like she was aiming at the blood god mantis, but the bullets drew a curve in the sky. And then, they all landed on the mantis. The rounds did not miss a single mark across the mantis body. So the pistol bullets can track too, huh? Han Sen was so happy. Yunsui looked at the scene strangely. Spell was just a Geno armament, yet she was capable of fighting a mutant Earl without any directions from her master. Normal Geno armaments were not capable of something like that. In fact, most Earl Geno armaments could not fight at all. They didn't have a will of their own. They did not have intelligence like Spell did. The pistols were a little weak. They hit the same spots on Blood God Mantis, but they failed to heavily damage it. Blood God Mantis tried to attack Spell, but it failed. After Spell drew some distance between the two, she summoned her sniper rifle. She wanted to get rough. But before Spell could fire the sniper rifle, a strange red smoke suddenly appeared behind her back. A crystal scythe was sweeping down towards her neck. Han Sen used his mind to make Spell quickly dodge, but it was too late. The crystal scythe slashed across her back. Her white armor was cut into by an inch, and it sliced open the muscles in her back deep enough to reveal bone. Fortunately, Spell was not a living creature. She had no blood to lose. After Spell was attacked, she moved forward. The Blood God Mantis screamed, and it jumped forward. The Red Reaper followed her from behind, and they attacked her together. Now that the Blood God Mantis has mutated, it can create a spirit that works like a fellow xenogeneic. This is similar to a summon skill, Han Sen thought. Yun Suyi, seeing spell in danger, quickly said, "What do we do now?" "Kill it," Han Sen said coldly. He had already drawn ghost teeth knife from his waist. Yun Sui saw Han Sen stand up, then teleport behind the blood god mantis. The purple knife light slashed, and the blood god mantis' triangle head looked as if it had been chomped on by a demon. The knife light cut through it, and the body fell from the sky. The blood reaper instantly shattered and disappeared into thin air. Xenogenic Earl mutant hunted. Blood god mantis. Xenogenic gene found. I didn't get its beast soul? Han Sen's thoughts were painted with greed.
Yun Sui looked at Han Sen strangely.
He had one-hit killed an Earl mutant Xenogenic. That was a far stronger feat than Thousand Feather Crane could accomplish. But seeing Han Sen's strength, Yun Sui felt even worse. She thought to herself, why is he taken? Han Sen dug the mutant gene out of the blood god mantis. It was a piece of its shell. There were still some wisps of smoke rising from the bloody piece of crystal. You could tell that it was the face of the Red Reaper. Earl gene's insufficient. Cannot refine mutant gene. Han Sen was shocked when hearing this. It was an Earl mutant gene. He had been able to refine the Ant Queen's gene when his total tally was a few points less. Now, he had 2 more genes than before, and yet he couldn't refine the blood god mantis gene. He pondered how the requirements for Earl genes were determined. Han Sen put away blood god mantis mutant gene and passed the body to his legless crane. Bringing Yun Suyi along with him, Han Sen proceeded to hunt Xenogenics on Old Night Island. He was only planning on going back when White Jing opened again. After that, the exam was set to start. Inside Buddha Kingdom, Clear Sea King bowed before Burning Lamp Alpha. Alpha, Han Sen broke the ant's body curse. He is now practicing in Sky Palace. Burning Lamp Alpha said casually, Knife Queen must have asked the leader of Sky Palace to break my looping skill. We're going to let him get off scot-free? Clear Sea King asked, looking crushed. The Buddha cannot engage in acts that disrupt Sky Palace, for the time being. If he is in Sky Palace, we will have to ignore him. Burning Lamp Alpha looked like he knew this was going to happen, as he didn't show too much concern. But, Clear Sea King wished to say something more, but he was interrupted by Burning Lamp Alpha. First Day is practicing in Sky Palace. How is he doing? Burning Lamp Alpha asked. He will be a marquis soon, Clear Sea King answered. Good. First Day isn't as talented as Seven Spirit or Speechless, but he can match them in strength. Through his practice in Sky Palace, and a roster of talents that marry the best of 2 races, he might have a higher chance of becoming deified than Seven Spirit did. We cannot allow this opportunity to escape our grasp, Burning Lamp said. Now that Han Sen is in Sky Palace, will he? Clear Sea King was worried. Burning Lamp said coldly, Sky Palace has taken in Han Senator. They have also taken in First Day. There is no need to worry for First Day's safety. Don't do anything until Han Sen leaves Sky Palace. And don't contact First Day. Wait until he is done in Sky Palace too. Not long after, the day came again when White Jing would open. Han Sen and Yun Suyi returned from Old Night Island. In that time, Han Sen had managed to hunt 11 Earls and Xenogenics. But since Yun Suyi was with him, he hadn't wanted to eat the Xenogenic genes in front of her. So, he brought everything back. When the Jade Heir in White Jing came to an end, Han Sen brought the Xenogenic genes back to Jade Island. Yun Suyi, follow me home, Yun Susang called to her sister. Yun Suyi glanced at Yun Susang, looking all moody, and said, Don't worry, sis. I'm going home. Yun Susang was shocked. She noticed there was something amiss with Yu Suyi's attitude. With worry, she asked, What's going on? Has Han Sen been mistreating you? Yun Suyi shook her head and sighed. They were not real sisters, but their relationship was just as close as 2 blood relatives. They talked about everything, so she told Yun Susang the things she had learned about Han Sen. I see. This is good, though. You are of the sky, and you are a daughter of an elder. You cannot be with an outsider. By ending it now, you're only saving yourself from greater suffering in the future. Yun Susang felt relief when she heard what was troubling Yun Suyi. So, she comforted her and said, Han Sen is smart, but he is not the only one out there for you. There are other geniuses like him, amongst the sky. I will find you someone, and you can decide. Yun Suyi wasn't in the mood for jokes, and she was feeling very sad. She forced a smile and went home. Because the next day was the exam, and Han Sen was in a rush, he didn't have the time to eat slowly. After he cooked all his stuff in one pot, he used consume to digest every xenogenic material as fast as he could. His body felt hot, cold, and sore, all at the same time. He felt as if he had been electrified, and some power flowed through his body. It made him feel stronger. The gene increase announcement played in his head, over and over. He had an extra 11 Earl genes. Now, counting the 2 from before, he now had 40 in total. But when Han Sen picked up the Blood God Mantis mutant gene, the announcement still declared he did not have a sufficient number of Earl genes. Blood God Mantis 1 gene has a much higher requirement than the Ant Queen gene. But now I don't have any more time to hunt xenogenics. Han Sen put away the Blood God Mantis mutant gene. He sat on his jade bed to practice jade skin. Although it was not as fast as practicing in the White Jade building, having a little was better than nothing. The next morning, when Han Sen was about to set off toward the exam location, Yu Jing came to him. He rode over on a jade night crane. Brother Han, there is something I seek to discuss with you. Yu Jing spoke quickly upon his arrival on the island. What is it? Han Sen looked at Yu Jing. Yu Jing lowered his voice and said, the first opponent you face today, he hopes he can proceed through the exam. So, he paid a high price, hoping you might let him go on. Yu Jing didn't say it directly, but he meant that the opponent had paid money for Han Sen to throw the fight. Sorry, I can't help him, Han Sen said simply. Yu Jing quickly said, Brother Han, you do know that your 6th enemy is Lone Bamboo, yes? It is difficult to determine whether or not you'll win. It would be better to take this benefit now, while you can. When Yu Jing said that it was difficult to determine who would win, he really meant that Han Sen would most likely lose. And if Han Sen lost, all Yu Jing's money would be lost. Right now, he was only concerned with losing as little as possible. My purpose is to get to first place. I don't care about anything else. After Han Sen said that, he mounted the legless crane. He flew straight towards Skypath Island, where the exams would be held. Yu Jing was shocked. He was frozen in place for a while. After a while, he snapped out of his daze. He spoke to himself miserably, saying, I hope you can reach first place too. But how are you going to beat Lone Bamboo? On Skypath Island, 4 different classes of people awaited their exam. Barons, Viscounts, Earls, and Marquises. The most popular section today would be the Earl examination. Many kings and nobles had gone there, and the stands were very full. It made the other 3 look so quiet. Many barons and Viscount students went there to watch the exam, too. They went there for Lone Bamboo. Han Sen was not afraid because no one took him seriously anyway. Aside from Yu Jing and the people that had made a bet with him, no one would be anticipating the fight between Han Sen and Lone Bamboo. When Lone Bamboo arrived, he was given the spotlight. People kept talking about him, trying to guess why he wished to participate in the exam. No one could guess the true reason why. Many people looked in Lone Bamboo's direction, which made it easy for Han Sen to get a glimpse of him, too. When he saw the man's face, he looked surprised. He said, that guy is Lone Bamboo? It was the arrogant man Han Sen had seen on the 7th floor of the White Jade building. Seeing the match roster, Han Sen found that he was 1 round behind Lone Bamboo. So, he sat on the sidelines to see what sort of power Lone Bamboo wielded. Sky Palace students were strong, so it was no wonder that they were a famous high race. There were many strong representatives of the race there, and they all had amazing geno arts. Han Sen had fun spectating, but not long after, he saw Lone Bamboo approach the arena. It was not just Han Sen turning to take a look at Lone Bamboo. Everyone else was, as well. One corner of the arena became the center of attention for the entire place. After a while, an Earl student from Sky Palace came to the arena. He went straight up to Lone Bamboo. Everyone thought they could watch Lone Bamboo fight, but that Earl student came before the man and just grabbed his hand. With much excitement, he said, Brother Lone Bamboo, I can finally see you. I have been a fan ever since I was small. The supposed fight turned into a meet between a fan and their greatest idol. After the Earl finished speaking, he forfeited the fight and left.
D***men.
He can do that? Han Sen felt depressed. The people next to Han Sen were even more depressed. Many of them were angry, even. That guy is too obscene. He knew he couldn't compete against Lone Bamboo. He did this just so he didn't have to embarrass himself. It won't go on like this, will it? With no one daring to fight him? It is hard to say. Everyone knows Lone Bamboo's strength. It does not matter if they fight or not, but perhaps someone arrogant enough will think they have the chops to challenge him. Brother Lone Bamboo is so smart. He does not have to fight, and yet he can still win. Not much later, it was Han Sen's turn for a reveal. He went towards the arena, but he did not draw much attention. Only a few people who knew Han Sen, or those that knew he got carried to Sky Palace, bothered to take a look. Han Sen's opponent was called Cool Jade. He was quite good amongst the earls, but there were many good ones like that all across Sky Palace. Being decidedly average, he wasn't very well renowned. Yun Suyi could not help but watch Han Sen's fight. Yu Jing had not dared show himself, as he was afraid he'd bump into the guys he had made the gambit with. If he went, he believed he'd be laughed at. Yun Suyi just sat down, and she heard a few men talking. Since I'm so bored, I might as well see how strong this Han Sen is. Yu Jing sure compliments him enough. It does not matter how strong he is. He's going to lose to Lone Bamboo, anyway. Don't say that just yet. Maybe he will be killed before he even meets Lone Bamboo. That's right, Ha. The few were chatting amongst each other, and it made Yun Suyi frown. When she was about to confront those voices, someone suddenly approached and sat down next to her. Brother Lone Bamboo? After Yun Suyi saw who the person was, she was shocked. Everyone looked at Lone Bamboo, and they were all shocked, too. Many women looked at him with the most charming faces. Why is Lone Bamboo here? Who is he watching? There is nothing worthy of his focus here, right? Of course there isn't. None of the earls here are worthy of his spectating. Maybe he is here to watch a friend? That is possible. Would it be for Yun Suyi? That is possible, too. Yun Suyi's prettiness and talent are unequaled across all of Sky Palace. She wouldn't be an embarrassment for Lone Bamboo. Yun Suyi, hearing that, frowned again. She looked at Lone Bamboo, and he looked down at the arena without any emotion. Yun Suyi's heart jumped, and she thought to herself, is Lone Bamboo here for Han Sen? There were many fights going on in the arena, and they were all going on at the same time. It was difficult to determine who he was watching. Han Sen felt the stare coming from Lone Bamboo, though. Han Sen turned to take a look, and he saw Lone Bamboo looking at him. He thought to himself, why is he watching me? Cool Jade pulled out his longsword and swung it at Han Senator. The swordlight possessed a purple mist, and it seemed strong enough to sunder the ceiling. Han Sen summoned spell next to him, and he fired his pistols at Cool Jade.
Young, young, young.
The munitions were continuously expelled, and Cool Jade's longsword kept swinging around with its purple mist. It blocked a few bullets, but more hit his body and armor. He flew out of the ring and conceded defeat.
Des astérisques men.
What is that thing? Is that a Geno armament? It looks very strong. A Geno armament like that is better to watch than the fight itself. Han Sen's victory didn't draw much attention, ultimately. Some students were interested in spell, more than Han Sen himself. Han Sen put spell away and left the arena. Everyone looked back to where Lone Bamboo had been, and they noticed he had vanished. Yun Suyi, who had been next to him, was gone, too. Now people knew they had guessed it right. He had gone there for Yun Suyi. Outside the exam arena, Yun Suyi was chasing after Lone Bamboo. He left as soon as Han Sen started fighting. Brother Lone Bamboo, please wait. Yun Suyi shouted as she chased after Lone Bamboo. Lone Bamboo stopped, looked at Yun Suyi, and said, Sister Suyi, what do you need? Brother Lone Bamboo, who were you watching earlier? Yun Suyi knew all about Lone Bamboo. There was no reason to beat around the bush. Why would this matter concern you? Lone Bamboo frowned. Yun Suyi quickly said, Han Sen is my friend. Were you watching his fight? Lone Bamboo nodded. He had no reason to hide the fact. It is because of him that I joined the exam. I do not want to be number one. I only wish to fight him. Yun Suyi had guessed that he had come here for Han Sen, but she didn't expect this answer. It shocked her. Why? Yun Suyi looked confused. Han Sen was smart, but Lone Bamboo was even stronger. After seeing Han Sen's power, she still believed Lone Bamboo was superior. This thought was inside the heads of everyone in Sky Palace. Han Sen could not change everyone's expectations simply by performing well. It is because he activated the 12 buildings and 5 cities in White Beijing, Lone Bamboo said, before he turned around.
What?
Yun Suyi was shocked. In the history of Sky Palace, fewer than 100 people had experienced what Lone Bamboo just claimed. And out of all the earls in the exam, Lone Bamboo had been the only one to see all the buildings and cities. Even Thousand Feather Crane and Yun Su's Hang had only been able to spy the 12 buildings. They hadn't seen a single one of the 5 cities. After Han Sen beat Cool Jade, there were no more fights left for Han Sen that day. He would have to wait until the next day. He didn't leave, though. He stayed to watch the fights. There was a difference between the Geno arts of the Geno universe and the Geno arts of the sanctuaries. Somehow, there seemed to be a thread connecting them. Sky Palace's Geno arts were very high tier. After watching the fights, Han Sen found himself learning a lot. He compared what he saw to what he had learned in the past. Han Sen left the place when all the exams were over for the day. Over the next few days, Han Sen did not encounter any strong enemies. Spell was so powerful that her pistols could beat everything she was put against. In no time at all, 5 Earl students were brought down. It was a shame that not many of his enemies had much in the way of fame. As a result of this, his continued success drew little in the way of attention. But when people did pay attention to his fights, they were greatly interested in what sort of Geno armament spell was. Aside from the first match that Lone Bamboo spectated, he did not return. Perhaps it was because Han Sen's opponents were so inferior, he wouldn't see much of anything regardless. Whatever the reason was, he did not come back. And Lone Bamboo's fights were fan meet and greets. No one in Sky Palace had the courage to fight Lone Bamboo. There was only one that had the courage to fight him, but when Lone Bamboo pulled out his sword, he could only move a step before the Earl's student conceded. Han Sen watched that match, and he was shocked. Lone Bamboo was stronger than he thought. After all, he is the one that survived the nightmare, Han Sen thought to himself. If he wanted the position of first, to receive under the sky, he'd have to beat Lone Bamboo. There was no getting around that. The next day would be the day when Han Sen was to fight Lone Bamboo. When he returned to Jade Island that evening, he went straight to studying Jade Skin. He didn't worry about the fight the next day. Han Sen's level would not be affected by emotions. Win or lose, as long as he tried his hardest, that was enough. Worrying over the results was a waste of energy. Brother Han, are you here? Yu Jing had arrived at Han Sen's island. What is it? Han Sen came out the door and saw Yu Jing riding his Jade Knight crane. It circled the sky above. Seeing Han Sen come out, Yu Jing came down and landed with the bird. He walked before Han Sen with a look of great worry and said, Brother Han, what are you going to do to prepare for tomorrow? What should I be preparing? Han Sen looked at him with confusion. Yu Jing looked depressed hearing that, and he gave a wry smile. You are going to fight Uncle Lone Bamboo. You know how strong he is. You should be getting prepared. How so?
Han Sen asked, Log King.
Such as taking some pills that can temporarily boost your power. Or perhaps even a treasure. The exams allow you to take drugs, and if you don't have any, I have some very effective pills you might benefit from, Yu Jing said, bringing out a few bottles. He placed them in front of Han Sen and said, I can sell them to you for a cheap price. I don't have money. Han Sen held his hands out to the sides, showing his empty palms. I can take an IOU, Yu Jing said quickly. I don't want to be in debt, Han Sen said. Yu Jing was angered by this, and he asked, Do you want to win or not? Yeah.
Han Sen nodded.
Yu Jing gritted his teeth and pulled out a bottle. He said, This bottle belongs to the Grandmaster Elder in the 6th seat. It contains the Feng Ho pills he created. After you use them, they can make you as strong as a marquise for a short time. The effects last 1 hour, and for the purpose of fighting Lone Bamboo, I can let you borrow them all. Borrow? How? If I eat it, it'll be gone, Han Sen asked Yu Jing. You use them before the fight. If you win, you reimburse me for the pills, Yu Jing said. What if I lose? Han Sen smiled at Yu Jing. Then that is okay. You can pay me back slowly. Yu Jing's jaw was starting to ache. I want them, but never mind. I can't pay you back if I lose.
Han Sen smiled.
You, Yu Jing was so angry. Yu Jing had never done anything that put him at a disadvantage before. He had received those pills from the Grandmaster, and he treated them like a treasure. He wouldn't use them willy-nilly. He kept them in a box, and no matter how much money he was offered, he wouldn't sell them. Now he wanted to give them to Han Sen, and Han Sen was declining. It made him furious. If Han Sen lost the next day, he'd also go bankrupt. Thinking of that, Yu Jing had to suppress his anger. He squeezed the bottle into Han Sen's hand and said, "Fine. You don't have to pay me back. These are a gift. Use all your strength to fight, and try your best to win tomorrow." When Yu Jing spoke, he felt as if his heart was bleeding. His eyes were all red when he put the pills into Han Sen's hand. He knew that even if Han Sen did use the Fengho pills, there was a fine chance he wouldn't win. But any chance was better than no chance. Yu Jing had to try everything he could to hold on to his money. "If you really want to help, get me some Earl's Energenic genes. I'll pay you back for those," Han Sen said, after a moment of thought. "Sure. Which element do you need, and how many?" Yu Jing said quickly. If they give Han Sen a higher chance of winning, he'd do it. If he was going to go bankrupt anyway, he might as well risk it. It does not matter. The more the merrier, but they do have to be Earl.
Han Sen smiled.